right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and I am joined by a very special guest today, Tristan Haggard of Primal Edge Health. How you doing today, brother?
David, thanks for having me on, my friend. I'm doing great, man. It's really nice to meet you and nice to chat. And I'm a huge fan of your channel. I try to catch your streams whenever I'm able to, and I always try to say what's up in the chat when I can. And I
Oh,
appreciate the work you've done, man. You definitely kind of help to flesh out some of these ideas, some of the more heady theological ideas for me in Orthodoxy. So I appreciate the work you do, man.
oh, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you. I've mentioned multiple times in streams that as we were just catching up before we went live, I used to live in Berkeley, California, very much into psychedelics, very much into spiritual, not religious. Slowly was exposed to orthodoxy through theology. And when I first started to think, oh, well, maybe I want to learn a little bit more about orthodoxy, I was actually watching live streams with you and Jay Dyer talking about carnivore, talking about Christianity, a few streams on the Boiler Room, and I had a cross-country trip from San Francisco. I was moving back to Indiana in about 8 months or so. So I was basically taking everything I could fit in a car and drive it home. And so for that multiple-day trip, I just listened to you and Jay Dyer. And so that was when I got exposed to the carnivore stuff, of which I adopted basically in a hybrid way last year. So all of that I wanted to talk to you. So your work has been greatly impactful to me. And so I've been a fan of yours and watching your content for a while now. So I was really excited to finally sit down and have a conversation together.
Sweet, man. Yeah, that's really cool. I'm glad could be of use to you, man.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned with Bobby, I know you're in the live chat. I had no idea about you guys' previous history before even that live stream. So that was pretty wild.
Yeah, that was a great stream, man. It brought because I don't get to talk to Bobby as often now, but like when he first was getting interested, like he was in this major transition phase, right? And we had some awesome conversations. And that was when I was just learning about Orthodoxy too, and kind of fleshing out a lot of the ideas and coming to terms with it and really desiring to become Orthodox. So yeah, we had some great conversations, Bobby and I, and yeah, that was a fantastic stream. I really liked that one.
Well, I appreciate it. And clearly you had a major impact on him because he credits much of his questioning of veganism and his sort of psychedelic worldview to you basically challenging him on veganism and the carnivore diet.
Well, I think it was more he ended up I think coming to like leaving veganism and then our relationship kind of established. And it was I think a lot of our conversations they were more about Gnosticism, psychedelics, and all of that because I had a similar past as you and Bobby. I grew up in Southern California. I attended the University of California, Santa Cruz. So I was really into, or like I think you talk about Terrence McKenna.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember reading the book you mentioned also
The Sacred
by
Mushroom and the Cross.
no, not that one. The other guy, the esoteric. He's got three names. What is that guy's
Oh,
name?
Robert Antoine Wilson?
Robert Anton Wilson.
Yes.
Yeah. So just reading like about Western esotericism and really, and not in like a really deep way, but actually, even kind of starting to play with some of those ideas at times when I was in my early 20s, right? Like got really into the ideas of Gnosticism and really just nihilism, right? Just struggling with nihilism since I was a child. So,
Hmm.
and then the world of experiential psychedelics, Gnosticism, and all that stuff ended up really in a roundabout way kind of driving me into the idea of well just put it they did actually end up because of running into so many walls. I did end up becoming a Christian after all of that and coming to God and coming to believe and have faith. So yeah, I really related to your conversation there because I had a similar past.
Well, I'd love to get in a little bit more to that past that you're talking about. So, what exactly did you grow up as? Like, was your family religious or spiritual, or how would you characterize that? Maybe how would
Yeah.
you characterize your worldview going into maybe college or so? Yeah, I assume you probably got into psychedelics, and then how does that lead you to orthodoxy?
Yeah, great question, man. So Um, whenever someone asks me this, I'm always tempted to do the Steve Martin from the Jerk line. I was born a poor black child, but yeah, I grew up in Southern California, right? So I grew up in the Inland Empire in San Diego County. Later on, went to high school in Carlsbad. So I grew up around skateboarders, surfers,
Mm-hmm.
California edgy subculture, right? And you know, Southern California is a strange place. It's a very weird place with a speckled history. I mean, Dave McGowan's books kind of get into a
Yep.
lot of the weirdness that is the history of California. You know, Chinatown's another film that's kind of a that's one of those really influential on me. And but there, California is a strange place, full of weirdos, hippies, Gnostics, drug culture, and a lot of the greater culture that you see spreading through the West. It starts in California and then kind of
Right.
ripples out from there. You know,
Right.
Silicon Valley, Hollywood. Thank God I didn't live in LA and Hollywood, but yeah, I grew up. I had atheist parents. They would say that they're agnostic. I would say that they would classify themselves as agnostics, but grew up as an atheist, right? We didn't go to church. My parents didn't really have any beliefs about spirituality. I remember when I was in high school, my dad kind of told me, "Oh, you should read about Buddhism and these all these other religions, and you know, look at all the world religions. And they all maybe have some truths in them, and those kind of ideas. You know,
Right.
kind of standard normie ideas." Looking back on it, I would say both of my parents, they're not. Um, yeah, I don't want to get into too much into there
Right.
into what I think is going on with them. I love my parents very much in that, but yeah, I think that I would call them atheists. They'd probably call themselves agnostics at the time. I had neighbors who had Bible study. I remember I had some neighbors, they had Bible study, and they were a really cool family. There was a family that lived across the street from me when I was in elementary school and I was really young, and they homeschooled their children. They adopted two children, so they had, 5 kids. Two of them were adopted. The father worked in California state prison system, but he was a really nice guy. He had a funny mustache and shotguns in his rafters and stuff. And the mom would educate the children. They weren't allowed to watch Disney movies. I'm just like, why can't you watch Disney movies? Like, this is so, like, that's pretty lame.
Right. Right.
Disney movies are so innocuous. Like, what's the problem? Now looking back, I'm like, no way in hell are my children ever going to watch these Disney movies until they're old enough to make their own decisions about it. So yeah, I mean, I completely understand why they raised their kids the way they did. And I was kind of influenced by that family a little bit at the time. I remember going to the Bible studies that they had, just mostly for social aspects, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
you could go hang out with your friends past dark, and other people come, and there's like girls from other parts of the town that come over, and you flirt with the girls, play around, mess with your buddies,
Right.
cause some trouble, all that stuff. So I would go to these Bible studies, and I remember sitting there, and my parents are at home. I'm over there at the Bible study, and they're teaching us about something or other, about like what's bad and what's good, basically, but no real depth of you know the nature of God, the nature of man. Just kind of like picture book style.
Right.
Noah's Ark. All the animals went into the ark, and to my rational mind, a lot of it just seemed, well, this doesn't really make sense, right? Why
Right.
they were telling us you can't drink, and none of these people drank alcohol at all. And my parents like to have a glass of wine at dinner. I'd never seen my parents drunk ever, but they would have like a glass of wine at dinner. So I'm like, why is alcohol bad if Jesus turned water into wine?
Right.
And the guy tells me, well, that was a different type of wine back then. That was more like grape juice. So at this point, I'm just like, okay, that's how it is. You're just dishonest. I'm like 8 years old. And yeah, so those are some of my early experiences with Christianity, right? Just straw man Christianity, really easy to brush off. But the fruits of like this, I mean, there was a really sweet family, actually. This family, they had a strong faith. They were, they would go to like the mega church Harvest, the Harvest Crusade and stuff like that. You ever seen that stuff? Greg
Mm-hmm.
Laurie, real famous guy. And so I would go to that church sometimes because everyone in Riverside went to Harvest, right?
Okay.
But I would just go for the social stuff. I knew I was seeking, like I wanted truth. I wanted reality. I wasn't satisfied with just the basic, you're just an animal. I wasn't satisfied with that. And I knew that I had like a sinful nature because I remember specific instances of as a child, like, stealing and lying and things like that, and feeling that, the temptation, feeling that that nature at a really young age. You know, it was one specific instance. I remember like trying to steal a baseball card from my neighbor, from my friend, right? And he calls me out on it. Like, dude, did you put the baseball card in your pocket? Like, you know, we're opening the packs of baseball cards and there's like a holographic one. I just like try to like jack his cards. I don't know why. It's just like I wanted it. I coveted it.
Right.
And then he calls me out on it, and then I double down. And I'm like, no, I'm just joking. See, I was just joking and like playing that I put it in my pocket. Right. So it's like, and I was young, man. I was maybe 9, 10 years old at that point. So, I mean, there's just certain instances like that where I kind of understood that there was like, that was wrong. I knew that was wrong. But at the same time, I would just justify and, oh yeah, whatever, you know,
Right.
It is what it is. It's all about me.
Right.
So anyways, like that was just some of the early experiences I had. When I was in high school, I ended up moving in the first year of high school out of Riverside, which is a godsend, right? Riverside was really methy, like a lot of like gangs and meth and just kind of bad stuff that some of the kids that I grew up with ended up getting involved in. So I moved out of there when I was 14, moved to a little bit safer area down in San Diego County and North County, San Diego. And I went through like a little depression in high school, you know, standard puberty, shitty diet, eating nothing but, you know, Mexican food and pizza and having no idea what I want to do with my life, having just completely disillusioned by the world. You know, I started, you know, I was reading about JFK and stuff like that. My grandma gave me some like JFK books when I was in high school. So I was kind of into some of the like deep politics type stuff and some of these ideas of, you know, government corruption. Was exposed to like the 9/11 truth stuff pretty early in about 2003, started really delving into a lot of that. So I was just kind of like, man, I was kind of like fully engulfed in clown world in high school. And I started smoking pot when I was, I first tried smoking weed when I was in 7th grade, smoked weed a couple times, got caught by my parents, stopped, then started again when I was like 15, 16, smoked weed all through high school, got into mushrooms, you know, always wanted to try mushrooms because I talked to some friends of mine who'd done them. You know, it's so cool, man. It's like you learn more about yourself and the world or whatever. And you see stuff and it's like, you know, and I was into like, you know, all the normie Southern California stuff like Led Zeppelin and, you know, like, oh, look, all my heroes, they all got high.
Right.
So tried mushrooms when I was in 11th grade. And that was an interesting experience. You know, I had some interesting experiences with these things of realizing and kind of feeling what I already knew, that there's more going on. Right? They never really, and thinking back, none of these drugs ever showed me anything that I hadn't already experienced outside of that world.
Right.
It was just like I had primed myself by reading all the Arrowwood and by reading the Terrence McKenna. Right. It's like you're like, oh, this is the experience I want.
Right,
so then you end up kind of just, you know, confirming your own bias of
Right.
like, oh yeah, you know, we're all one, we're all connected, or,
Right.
you know, my mind is everything, you know. So playing with these ideas ended up getting really dangerous at times because I got a little bit deeper into this in college. I went to university, still didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, completely disillusioned with the university system. I didn't know, like, it took me a little bit to really choose my major. I was like, I want to be a psychologist. Like I want to help people, right? Like that's what I thought. So I'll get into psychology. Well, then you start taking psychology courses and you realize the professors are just like creepers who want to hang out with 18-year-old girls, right? It's like, what the hell's going on here? Like all these professors are just trying to set up their coffee house meetings later on with the chicks in the class. So I don't know. I got really didn't see what I wanted, didn't find what I wanted in the academic world really. Studied history, was fascinated with history, and got my degree in history. Thought, you know what, maybe I'll teach, you know, maybe I'll just become an academic and get involved in academia. And also, no, did not. I decided that wouldn't be a good route for me. I didn't feel like that would be viable for myself. Also being kind of like rebellious in nature at the time, really didn't feel like I would be able to hack it, even if I was like a high school teacher and just like, oh man, I'll just be the cool high school teacher that tells the kids how it is, man. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. You're going to be the high school teacher who hates your job and ends up hating the children. So yeah, anyways, none of that stuff. I did not want to do any of that stuff. I got a major injury too when I was like 21. I was like 21 years old. at that time, I just thought I was invincible, right? Like I just like, oh man, I'm like the coolest. I'm so cool. I thought I was really cool. I thought I was like really had my stuff together. It's like, man, I just dropping acid all the time and had my fake ID since I was 19. So I was like hanging out at the bars really young, and I had all these older friends who weren't even in college anymore. I'm like, oh, I'm so cool, man. I just thought I was like really had my stuff together. I mean, really, I was just still a confused, lost child.
Right.
I got injured skateboarding, and I was bombing a hill, and I just got nailed by this. It was my fault. I was crossing an intersection and hit this car, and my hip got all twisted. After that, I just had really terrible chronic pain, and was kind of just put out. I couldn't do the things I wanted to do physically, and then that affected me mentally and emotionally. So started thinking about, well, maybe become like a chiropractor or something, try to figure out how to make myself not in pain all the time. Thought about going to chiropractic school, becoming a naturopath, got into like alternative health and some of these ideas. And at that time I was 22 years old, and this was 2009. So then I'm looking at like, oh man, if I'm going to go and become a chiropractor or become a naturopath, I'm going to have to go back and start taking biology courses. And so then I go back and I start doing the pre-med courses. I'm like, man, this is gonna like extend my college career for another year or so. I still have nightmares about being in university, right? Like every once in a while, I still get a nightmare where it's like, I could go take the test and I haven't been to class for half the semester. And I was just, man, I was so pissed. And at this time I was so angry because I was really mad at the world. I was really mad at God. At this point, I kind of come to I accept the idea that I knew that there was a higher power. I knew that there was a God, but I didn't realize Orthodoxy existed. I knew that God wasn't I felt like God wasn't in the the Roman Catholic Church. I mean, I had friends as a kid who's like real close friend of mine. Her uncle was in the Roman Catholic Church and was part of all that pedophilia scandal and stuff like that back in the early 2000s. So it's like I'd known about a lot of that stuff. Like that's not it. The Pope idea is crazy. The Protestants all just basically use the Bible like a magical grimoire, basically, right? It's like, like I have seances with your Protestant friends, and whoever's the most enigmatic and charismatic and mystical is going to like take control of it. It was just like, it felt, the whole thing, I didn't make sense to me. So then I got into like Western, like occultism and stuff. And it was just like, yeah, I'll just use my will. I'm just an animal, and I'm just going to, use my animal magnetism to get what I want out of the world, those kind of ideas. Right. And that's actually the time that I really got injured and really messed myself up physically. Cause I was just thinking I can do what I want, like I'll just bomb hills and go. I used to skate down hills really fast and go through red lights and to dodge cars and stuff. Cause I thought I didn't care if I died. I thought I was just, it's like, hitting a car and then being seriously injured after that.
Right.
That really, I mean, I'd say it humbled me, but it didn't humble me enough because, I still had a lot to work through too. But yeah, that ended up really changing my trajectory, is just being in pain physically, spiritually in anguish, mentally. At that time, I met some people who had really strange experiences in California, to say the least, people that were involved in possible human experimentation since a young age. Ooh. Like type of crazy people.
How did you come in contact with them?
Because I had a blog that I was writing about occultism in the media, and I was like, I had this blog, and it was like kind of like vigilant citizen style blog, and I had some posts about like Masonic symbolism and like in music, in the music industry, and Lady Gaga stuff. This is 2008. This guy contacts me. He's like, hey man, I have this crazy story. And I'm like, oh, cool. Let me interview you. So I met him and brought my camera and interviewed this guy, this whole crazy story. And I was just there. I ended up meeting a few people who were involved in like libertarianism in that area. Right. So my political leanings kind of started changing from like nihilist, who cares, just, smoke pot and do whatever, to like, the government's super corrupt. Maybe if we go back to the constitutional principles, we're going to somehow get beyond this. Like Ron Paul 2008,
right.
If we get Ron Paul in, right? If we get Ron Paul in 2012, then so that, hit a wall with a lot of that. And through some of these experiences though, I mean, I remember reading like Kathy O'Brien's book in 2009. You read her book, The Transformation of America?
No,
weird ass book.
I haven't read it.
It's like a MK Ultra, she says that she's an MK Ultra victim, and she testified before Congress, and she never got sued for defamation by anybody. And there were certain pictures of Dick Cheney that were on the internet of like that corroborated gross things that she said about his anatomy. Like there was just weird stuff that happened there. And this was a dark book. It was a dark time, man. And I read like, a lot of these books about mind control after talking to some of these people that were involved in, Stanford Research Institute, Stanford Hospital, and growing up around with parents in like DIA and weird stuff like that. So I, I ended up getting into like a real dark night of the soul kind of a thing of just like, oh yeah, this stuff goes way deeper. And like the power dynamics of this dark world that I was playing with, just thinking that, hey, you're like, I'm gonna get laid more, or I'm gonna get more money and stuff like that. I ended up realizing that, it goes beyond that. It goes to like ritual human abuse, ritual human sacrifice and stuff like that. And so that's all the time. And during that time, I'm also physically like mangled, I'm laying down in bed and I'm trying to stretch my lower back out and get my hip to get back in line. And I'm just like screaming in pain and anger, not because it's like the pain is so bad that I'm screaming, but it was like that slight pain constantly, right? Slight physical impingement, couldn't walk properly, felt crooked as heck. So anyways, like through that period, I ended up just, opening a Bible. And I had this Bible that I had actually, the first time I ever opened a Bible, I had this insane encounter, crazy like experience with a non-physical entity. Now this is stuff that I've never really talked about this like on anything. You're getting the scoop, man. You're getting the exclusive scoop. So, I mean, I haven't talked about this in a long time. And, but yeah, back when I was 20 years old, I went to this place, this old shack with a friend of mine. And, they had this family, this old like mining town called Strawberry, California. And they had this little spot on a river and it was in the middle of nowhere. And I was with a friend of mine. He was a little older. He was like 23, 24. He didn't go to university. He was a mailman, really cool guy. Missed that guy. I haven't been able to get in touch with him for a few years. He dropped off and he deleted his Facebook. So I don't have his number. So I'd love to get in touch with my buddy Justin. And so he's there with his girlfriend, and then we're at his friend's place. And I don't really know his friend that well, but it was this really cool journey, like out of Santa Cruz. He was my neighbor, and we had this apartment building, and they were doing construction in it, and it was just constant dust and like the destructive noises of industry. And it was like, I just felt where I lived was dirty, and I felt so disconnected from God, from reality, from what I really wanted. And he had come over, and my friend knocks on my door, and I was just having this like crazy experience. And he knocks on the door, and I'm like, just like breaking down in my apartment. He's like, "Hey man, you want to go on 4th of July and go to Strawberry, California?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't know where that is, but I'll come with you. Let's do it." And so we go on this journey, and he had this old Bible in this place, and I opened it up and I started reading Genesis. And because I realized I'd never read the Bible, I'd always made fun of it. And I thought I was just above this, and, just very prideful and arrogant. And I was like, okay, I'm going to read this. There's got to be something here. Open it up. I read Genesis, and I really connected with it. I was like, wow, this is really amazing. There's so much deep. I have so many questions, right? I'm like, well, what's the serpent?
Right.
Who are the Watchers and the Nephilim? Like, what is going on here? And it was like, well, they're talking about creatures, the angels mixing with humans, so I have all these questions. I read, the first few chapters of Genesis, and everyone's asleep. I end up going outside and having this crazy encounter with this light in the sky that's zipping around and telepathically communicate. I've never had any experience like this before.
Whoa.
Like, this thing is moving. It's, I don't know if it was an angel or a demon. Like, at this point, I don't know if it was an angel. I don't know if it was a demon. It was able to communicate with me telepathically through what felt like kind of like my heart, my mind.
You're sober during this?
Completely sober. Like, this is one of those strangest experiences. I didn't drop a bunch of acid, didn't take like, DMT or anything. Right. I probably smoked weed earlier that day or something, but
that's not gonna have that experience.
Yeah, it's like, it sounds, if I told like all the details, it would sound like I'm having almost an epileptic seizure, right? So this thing, this light, this being, and I knew it was a being, and I asked it, but not with my mouth. Like none of the conversation was happening verbally, and I was crying and laughing. I was crying, like afraid it was going to kill me. I thought I was going to destroy it because I felt like it was so powerful that it could destroy me. So then I
Wow.
went inside and hid behind a wooden wall.
What?
And then I'm crying inside like I'm crying in this shack in the middle of nowhere. And I'm just like, never experienced something like this in my life. This thing felt so powerful. I'm crying. And then I start laughing because I realized that I thought this thing could destroy me with a single movement of its will. And here I am hiding behind a wooden wall underneath in a 200-year-old 1840s home. So I'm like, all right, this is an experience. I thought about waking my friends up. I'm like, I'm gonna wake my friends up and because I want to just like, this has to be real. I'm gonna wake them up and we're all gonna experience this. But then I'm like, no, that's not gonna happen. This is just, I knew that wouldn't be how it went. So I went back outside and I kind of like watched this thing and it told me, don't be afraid. Basically, that was what it was communicating to me. Don't be afraid. Don't fear. Don't have fear. And I was so scared. I was so afraid I thought it was going to kill me. And anyways, that experience, there was a sound to it, kind of a humming sound. And, growing up, I'd read alien books when I was a kid. So I was like, man, what are these aliens it's going to be like some aliens. Who knows what's going to happen? Are they going to anal probe me or something? Going to Klaus Schwab my booty? Like what is this, right? But it wasn't like that. It wasn't like this. It wasn't like a physical thing. It broke up into two pieces. It was like this non-locality that was showing me that it knew my thoughts before I had my thoughts and answering questions before I could. It was insane. Telepath, like it was crazy.
Wow.
I thought it was. I asked it if it was God, and it said no. Basically, it said no, but the feeling I got was that it's a lot closer to God than I am, whatever this was. But I don't know. Looking back now, this could have been a demonic thing. This could have been an angelic thing, but it was when I opened Genesis, right? So I also got the feeling that I shouldn't tell anybody about that experience and that it was like exclusively just for me. And then I tried to tell everybody about that experience. So then
so when that happened, did it immediately connect a sort of causal relationship between you reading Genesis and this occurrence? Or
this was like the flow of the night. Cause when I read Genesis, it was a really profound experience.
So immediately you connected you reading the Bible has something to do with this experience.
It was like inside reading the Bible, go outside, lay under the stars. Wow, this is amazing. And then immediate interaction with this thing. And it was very strangest experience I've ever had in my life. Don't wish it would happen again because it was really jarring, right? Like it changed me and it scared me. It scared a lot of people around me because I started telling my friends, dude,
please tell the experiences of sharing that and people's expressions.
I was just like, cool, man, whatever. I'm like, no, you don't realize there's more to this. There's more. We're not the only thing that's here. We're not in charge of this. There's more going on. And they're just like, dude, you take some acid or something, man? I'm just like, no, but a lot of it in the past, but no. It was a strange experience. So initially trying to tell people about that, it really, now that I think back, it really did cheapen the experience for me because the experience really couldn't be communicated visually. Verbally rather, like you can't really communicate something like that. Now after that, I got that Bible. I was like, dude, I need to bring this Bible with me. And I have this Bible that was in your inheritance home that your father inherited from your grandfather. Can I take this Bible home? I took that Bible home and I had a Bible, right? But I still I didn't really go deeper into that until a couple of years later when I was having struggles kind of integrating what I had experienced in, the immediate human reality with, really traumatic events and not in my life, but talking to other people who had incredibly traumatic histories involving possible human experimentation, and these type of really terrible things that people do to children and stuff like that. So then this world opens up to me and I'm like, I don't know how to deal with this. Like there's evil, right? It was a kind of just came
Right.
to realize that there's really intense evil in the world, and also knew that I kind of played a part of that to a certain extent. And I started kind of feeling the draw towards like repentance. And so I remember, and at this time I was with Jessica, and I had were together, right? I had met Jessica about maybe a year after that experience that I had with that, whatever it was, whether it was
Oh,
angelic or demonic, only
okay.
God knows. Uh, so Jessica and I were, when she'd moved in with me, we're living together. I knew that I'd come to the conclusion when I was 21 that the next girlfriend I had, it was like, that's going to be the one that I marry. It was just like, I'm sick of dating. This is whack. I'm just going to find the, I don't know if I thought I was just going to like will it or if I was just going to find the right one, but she ended up coming into my life and it ended up clicking. We came together and, yeah, I just kind of like told her basically a few months into our relationship, hey, I'm really serious about this and this is how it's going to be. And are you going to come with me or not? That was kind of how it was. And she was like, I don't think she'd ever met somebody. I was kind of not like really far out there person, but I really had a lot of momentum, you know, at the time. So she was just like, yeah, I'll come with you, crazy guy. I'm into it. So she was down. She came with me. So we had moved in together, and she was with me during this time. And I'm like interviewing this guy, and we're talking about his crazy past, and it's lining up with some of the books that I'm reading at the time about, you know, some of these mind control experimentation
Right.
claims by some of these victims of you know, the ritual abuse and things like that. So my whole world is breaking apart basically, right? And all my friends are finishing the university and they want to just drink and party and skate, and I'm just like, this is not, I don't want to skate and drink. I want to skate and I sometimes want to drink and party with you guys, but I'm not, I was just, this
Right.
isn't for me. You know, I
Right.
knew that there was a dead end,
Right.
you know? And yeah, I remember opened the Bible again. We had this one day when we're both, I don't know, just, I remember just crying and didn't know what to do. The evil, I just felt that presence of that, the intenseness of like the darkness of the world. I'm crying, breaking down kind of, and we end up opening the Bible. And that week we had both been kind of started reading the New Testament. And so we, you know, opened the Bible, we prayed together, prayed to God to guide us and help us. And I'd never prayed up until that point. You know, I'd never like
Wow.
prayed out loud with my words. I'd been places where people would say prayers. I'd been to goofy churches in Southern California where they're, you know, oh, dear Lord, we just ask that you go ahead and lift up our wallets in prayer, and just go ahead and lift up everybody's hands so they can drop that in the tip jars and flows around the church, Lord, you know, that kind of stuff. But I never really like prayed and begged God for help out of feeling weak and broken. And that happened. And so then that, at that point, I felt like I was a Christian kind of.
Wow.
And I had to reconcile with like, okay, well, you're supposed to get baptized. It's
Right.
supposed
Right.
to, right. It's like, if I believe the Bible, like, where's these priests and these bishops? And I couldn't figure any of that out because so that years down the line,
For
10
sure.
years later, finally, you know, kind of end up finding Orthodoxy. But um, yeah, I mean, that's kind of like leading up to before we ended up moving to Ecuador. That was the trajectory. So I started working on a documentary film about some of the crazy stuff that was going on in California. We got involved in local politics and trying to help people get elected to city council. Saw even more corruption at the local level than I would ever imagine there could be. Got involved in like libertarian groups locally, trying to get smart meters stopped in the region. That was a dead end. So California just seemed like it was, we were just hitting dead end after dead end.
Right.
And at that point, I'm like, I'm so sick of the university, right? I'm like arguing with my professors about climate change. Uh, and they're, you know, they're just totally sold on, oh yeah,
Oh,
there's too many
right.
people. There's, you know, the overpopulation.
Right.
I mean, I had this conversation with my biology professor and he's telling me about how, I'm arguing with him about climate change, and he's just like, "Look at Easter Island. You know, the people ate each other because they didn't have enough resources."
What does that have to do with the sea not rising?
Nothing, and it's actually not even true. Also, it's like those just lost faith in the university system,
Right.
despised the university system at that point, and just said, "You
Ditto.
know what? Screw it. I'm done with academia. I don't know how I'm going to make a living. I don't know what's going to happen, but I got to get out of California." And we had known this guy who was this like crazy Robin Hood vegan, like weird kid. He's in prison now because he robbed a bank. He robbed 3 banks. He would have got away with it if he hadn't robbed the 3rd bank in his own hometown. Right?
Greedy.
This guy was on a
Got
death trip.
greedy.
Got greedy, dummy. Dude, this guy had a plan though. Have you ever seen the movie? There's this movie that came out in like 2014 called The Place Beyond the Pines.
I've never heard of it.
It's a good movie. It's with
I'll
Ryan Gosling.
write that down.
This guy came up with a plan to rob a bank that ended up being in that movie. His plan was, he's like, dude, you're going to get a U-Haul. You're going to get a U-Haul. I'm going to go on my motorcycle with a pistol. I'm going to rob this bank and I'll drive it into the back of the U-Haul. And I want you to drive the U-Haul. And I'm just like, I'm 21 at the time. So I'm like, no. I thought of it. There's a minute when I was like thinking about it. He's like, dude, like 90, like 70%. He gave me all these stats. He's like 70% of bank robbers actually get away with it. And the only reason the ones that get caught is because this, and this. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm not going to prison for the rest of my life to make a few $1,000s with you. like, tell me how it goes though, buddy. So he ends up going to jail. It's really, it's super funny, right? Like, so that was like my childhood and adulthood. My childhood world and my adult world were just really clashing at that time. And I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. I got no faith in the system, no faith in the monetary system. Yeah. Right. I'm like Ron Paul, 2008 kind of guy. Right. And, fiat currency and this and that. Got to go back to the constitutional principles and losing faith in that too. Mm-hmm. And so this guy had told me about this idea of like exporting foods from South America and going down to South America. He's like, man, South America's awesome. I want to go to Peru and like export chocolate, cacao, and maca and stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of fun. And he ended up going to prison. And we ended up deciding to go. He went to prison and we went to South America instead. And so, yeah, we saved up a little bit of money. Like, we didn't really have much money, but at the time, like we lived in a house that was the size of my office now. And it was a converted storage unit in the beach flats, the beach flats that, right in front of the boardwalk in Santa Cruz.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, 3 blocks from the boardwalk in like Sereno'ville. It was crazy. Like there's like gunshots outside and they're selling heroin. And Poets Park was the place we lived. You guys look up Poets Park. There's always like shootings there. But it was funny. So yeah, we lived there and just saved up some money and saved up as much as we could. And we ended up coming down to South America in 2010 and kind of just fell in love with it. Really liked Ecuador. Came down to this little small town in the Andes and kind of fell in love with it. Decided, all right, well, we want to live here. We don't know what we're going to do, but we don't need that much money to stay alive here. Right. And maybe the world's about to end, so we just hunker down here for a few years, right? So it was 2010, and we went back to the U.S. one time to sell our cars and then get our dog, and we came back here. Jessica got pregnant in 2011. I was working with a company. We were exporting. I was doing sales for a company that was exporting stuff like cacao and maca and stuff like that. A friend of mine who was really into like ethnobotanicals and stuff like that. And we were, just involved in like sales and the exports of so-called like superfoods and really shady business too, by the way. Not what we were doing was not shady, but everyone we were surrounded with, the business practices were so shady. They're selling you barley powder and saying it's maca and stuff like that. It's just, dude, like half the stuff. And the C of A's are all fake. Like the certificate of analysis that you get. Somebody goes down to, South America, or they go to China and they go get goji berries, right? And you're going to ask for a certificate of analysis from this person who's trying to sell them to you. They're just going to forge that 98% of the time. They just make it up. They just take an old certificate of analysis, they make the document, and they send that to you. And they tell you it's got within the acceptable range of lead and cadmium and mercury. Really, you have no idea because they didn't pay the $500 to get the test. They just made the C of A and send it to you because there's no regulation on any of this stuff. So yeah, that's a whole other world. But we were involved in that, and then started building this YouTube channel in 2014, started building up this YouTube channel based on just essentially animal-based diet, ketogenic diet. And we'd come upon the idea because our daughter had some dental caries. She had a little bit of dental issues.
Mm-hmm.
We ended up coming upon the work of Weston A. Price, whose book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, is a really important read for anybody who wants to understand what a good human diet looks like.
All right.
Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. Weston A. Price did this really important work of anthropology in the 1930s. So this is before a lot of these cultures that he was able to visit were having contact with like Western imported foods and refined foods and processed foods. They all had perfect dental health. The women all had wide hips and they didn't have very much difficulty giving birth. The jaws were properly developed. The nasal cavities were properly developed in all the children. And he found certain similarities between all the cultures that he visited, whether it was like Tahitians or Swiss in the Lochental Valley. He went to Peru. He went to and visited the Inuit. And all these people had perfect dental health. They didn't have tuberculosis or cancer. They didn't have diabetes. They didn't have what he called the diseases of civilization, which considered the Western, the foods of commerce were the vehicle in his theory that would bring in these diseases. And he would study families where there's like 2 children. One of the children works at the post office and is eating the imported foods and the jams and all that. The other child is eating the ancestral foods that their parents ate, that were locally raised. And all those diets, all these indigenous diets from these different people from, whether it was Switzerland or the Hebrides Islands or the Peruvians, they all focused on animal fats and animal foods for fertility and for certain, for building up the body. And they would all eat, locally produced tubers, roots, and some carbohydrates, but the bulk of their calories all came from animal foods. So he was actually able to also reverse dental caries and dental caries being dental decay in children by giving them lots of butter, raw dairy, bone broth, and things like cod liver oil, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K2, these fat soluble vitamins. He ended up discovering that these were crucial for bone formation, for the formation of the central nervous system. And for instance, if you deprive pigs of vitamin A, they'll be born without eyes. Like a sow that's deprived of vitamin A, the babies will be born without properly developed ocular nerves and their eyes will shrivel and they won't even grow. So like this book really influenced us, and that got us in the idea of, all right, well, we've got to fix our daughter's. She started getting some dental caries when she was a year old and we're freaked out. And like dentists will tell you that's because the mother's breastfeeding, right? They'll blame the mother for breastfeeding. Your breast milk is destroying the child's teeth. So then mothers are like, well, I can't breastfeed my child at night now, and I'm going to have to brush their teeth obsessively and do all this stuff. So, right. So we're like broken hearted over this. Like, what are we going to do? Is our child teeth going to be all messed up when she grows up? She's going to be a little hillbilly, crooked tooth woman. We got to pay some dude to marry her one day. No, but we were just like, what's going to happen to our poor, beautiful daughter? And, we ended up actually reversing that using the principles that were taught by Weston Price. And she was drinking raw milk and have a lot of cream, lots of butter and liver, cod liver oil, stuff like that. And within a few months, bone broth, lots of bone broth, bone marrow. Her teeth started hardening up and her adult teeth are totally fine. Our second child's teeth are perfect. And he never had any issues with dental caries. And so that got us into like the idea of nutrition as a way of improving our lives, and definitely improved our lives. Like injuries that I discussed that major injury that I incurred when I was like 21, when I when I hit a car, which in turn hit me back. This ended up really changing our lives. So we started this channel, started building that up, and by the grace of God, it actually ended up becoming semi-successful. Part of it was just timing. Like nobody was doing what we were doing at the time. We kind of like started help to kind of popularize keto and stuff when that was relatively unknown. And Joe Rogan blew up the whole keto thing, right, and that ended up boosting our channel inadvertently. And then we were just kind of at the right place at the right time to build the channel.
What was the title of Price's book one more time? I just want to write that.
Yeah, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration.
Okay. I know other people are probably thinking that nutrition.
Try to get like an older copy, like the hardcover copy. Here's the one that we've got. It's from like the 70s.
Oh wow.
But it's got there's got photographs of the perfect teeth of these, so-called savage people who, these are Peruvians with just, none of these people brush their teeth. You know what I'm saying? It's like none of these
Wow.
people, the Inuit, the Seminole Indians that lived in Florida, they would live off of the sea cows, the manatees. None of these people were brushing their teeth. None of these people were worried about dental hygiene, but they focused on, there were nutritional principles that he found were common among all these healthy cultures. But then as soon as they came in contact with Western culture, they would deteriorate physically. They would start to get tuberculosis. The British would come in, like the Hebrides Islands. The British came in there and they forced these Scottish people to stop using these thatch roofs that they have, that they used to burn. They used to have these thatch roofs and they would burn peat moss in their houses. And then they would use that peat moss to fertilize their oats that they would grow, which was the only plant food that they could grow there.
Okay.
So they had oats and their whole diet was based on, they lived harsh lives, like in this island, just really intense storms all the time. And they had a few sheep, but there was very little that would grow on this island. The sheep would eat some of the peat moss and they would graze, but they would grow some oats and then they would eat cod and crabs and they would fish. That was their whole life, was pulling fish out of the sea. And they would put oats, they would stuff the oats in the fish heads and stuff like that, but they couldn't grow the oats. Nothing would grow on this island. They couldn't grow the oats unless they burned the peat moss that they built their roofs. They burned the peat moss and then their roofs would catch the ash and then they would take that, the roof thatch, and they would use that as a fertilizer. The British came in, they told them, no, this is a stupid thing. We know what's best for you. We are British. We're going to help you, love. We're going to force you. Yes, you're just going to sterilize yourselves, and we'll go ahead and we'll give you a vasectomy. We'll give you a vasectomy. And then the British come in and they basically they just castrated their culture, and they told them, you can't do this. You have to build a separate dwelling. You can no longer have your fires in your homes because you're going to get tuberculosis. Right? We're trying to save you. They took up the white man's burden. The British come in to these other, these Scottish people and just destroyed their health, destroyed their culture, and made it to where they weren't even able to grow their crops anymore because they couldn't fertilize their oats anymore. So, I mean, and this is back in the 20s and 30s that this is happening. It just keeps going. It just like this whole thing, you see, this book really shows how destructive the West has been, not just like on a spiritual level, but people like these cultures physically degenerated and then morally degenerated as well. Like these, the Lochental Valley, these Swiss people, they were Roman Catholic and they, had a really strong community bonds. They didn't have doctors or policemen. They didn't need them. No doctors, no policemen. All their food came from their local area. They had cattle that they raised. They ate cheese. They drank milk, and they made broth. And they would have some vegetables, and then they would have some grains that they would mill right there on the spot. And that's what they ate. So that book is Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, if anybody's interested in that. It's really an important work, and it's overlooked. And I think it's one of the most important anthropological works of the 20th century because of the lens and the timing of it, right? It's before World War II, before the massive expansion of, the Western diaspora throughout every, in the complete dominance of the whole world by the West. And he was able to come in contact with a lot of these cultures that were still, they still had the practices that were passed down to them from their ancestors as far as nutrition goes and the organization of their local social lives. Now, it doesn't mean that they were all like perfect before the West came, but
Sure.
Interesting nonetheless.
No, I could. When you were speaking and you were talking about this sort of, we fail to recognize the disastrous consequences of Western civilization. That I couldn't help but think, the irony is the Christian heritage of the West. That we're having this conversation because we came back to Christ in one way or another, Orthodox Christianity, and that what we're talking about, the whole phenomenon of Western civilization. Is like it really goes back to that schism, and so we recognize the validity of this theology that we've discovered. Also, I think the anti-male, anti-white rhetoric of the world is tied to the remnants of whatever's left of the Christian civilization present in Western civilization, and so I couldn't help but think the irony of the domino effect post schism, everything that happens, all the way to, as you're saying, California. You're talking about how California seems like everything happens in California and then it reverberates back around the world. But the world was expanding west, west, west. And California was literally the end of the frontier.
Yeah.
And so once the frontier was over, it's like now the new landscape is like the rewriting of the moral ground. And so now that instead of moving west, it now turns and it starts moving back east. And so the rest of the world then is get affected from everything that, that really spawns in California. It's just something that came in my head when you were talking, but I was like, wow. And then with the diets, then with everything tied, with the degeneracy and Silicon Valley, I mean, just like the semiotics, the patterns, they keep emerging.
Yeah. And then when you look at like what Silicon Valley is, it's kind of like the bionic phallus of the British Empire. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's it that expansion westward, it reached the end, and then where do you go from there? So then it's just like, I guess, that's when the serpent comes back around and says you're going to be gods again.
Right.
And this is when we actualize the great plan. But yeah, it's crazy. And it's like when we talk about Christianity, you and I understand that we're not talking about something that originated in the West. This is not like Western Christianity. I mean, even here, it's like it's a major problem. So we became Orthodox, and we, obviously that's why we're over here talking to you. So we became Orthodox, and we're members of the Serbian Patriarchate, and so our spiritual father is Serbian. And like, as you know, the Serbs are very critical of the Catholic Church. The Serbs are they're quite upset with the Roman Catholic Church.
Right.
And we live in a Roman Catholic country, but a lot of people here are also very disillusioned with the Roman Catholic Church. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people are very disillusioned with the history of Christianity as well, right? Like people who understand what happened with the conquistadors, right? And now I'm not saying that it's all the West's fault, or that like, it was just Pocahontas and John Smith kicking it, and it was all just like sunshine and rainbows and ayahuasca before the mean white man came. That's not how it was. Like, it was war. It was dominance. Right. There was human sacrifice going on, not in the Inca Empire as much, but on the outskirts of the Inca Empire it was still cannibal tribes. And there are still cannibal tribes in the jungles, right? Like you see the shrunken heads and stuff, the famous Shuar shrunken heads that comes out of the Peruvian jungle. Those people they're savage. They have no conception of morality that we would recognize, right? And it was a harsh world. Like you look at the Maya, the Aztec, they're lopping off heads and they're eating babies, before Jimmy Savile made it cool. they quote me on that one. But like it wasn't perfect. But yeah, like a lot of the indigenous, they're like, the Roman Catholic Church these are brutal people who have a history of genocide. And that is true. The Eastern Orthodox Church never committed genocide. The Eastern Orthodox Church did not kill millions of people. In fact, the Eastern Orthodox Church, Eastern Christians, who we would say are the true Christians, Eastern Orthodox have had many genocides enacted on them, including by the Roman Catholic Church. So when you look at the history of the Serbs, when you look at what happened during World War II, it wasn't just one ethnicity that was being targeted in a lot of the systematic exterminations that were happening. Anyways, that's beside the point. But I think a lot of people, they get so disillusioned with the West, and then they lump in Christ with the West. They think that Christ is this figure that the West invented. But no, the West schism, the West, like you were saying, and you and Jay have done such a good job at talking about these topics. And this is something that fascinates me. And that's something that I've just, over the last few years, come to understand, is that, the West broke off from Christianity and did its own thing. And I think what we see now, the history of, North America, South America, all these genocides, when it's sad to see that people they blame that on Christianity. And I guess, you and I would say that, yeah, that's obviously not Christianity that's doing this. Right. But yeah, the repercussions of the degeneration from the West, they go beyond just spiritual. They actually were physical as well. As these cultures broke down, the generational knowledge on how to feed their children, how to produce food on their land, how to manage land effectively, that knowledge was lost, and that knowledge was systematically exterminated. And, Bill Gates is now owned what, like a third of all the farmland in the
Right.
United
And
States.
yeah, in the
And
United
these little
States.
people are being slowly genocided. And I don't mean genocide in the way of like, oh, they're putting them in gas chambers, but genocides can happen slowly. And genocides can happen via displacement.
Right.
Genocides can happen via economic destruction
Right.
and the slow erosion of the transmission of knowledge generationally. And that's what we've been seeing as far as nutrition goes, right? And that's been a major topic that we've kind of discussed on our channel over the years.
Right. And genocide can also happen through breeding by forcing certain women from certain groups to breed with people of different groups, that you begin to eradicate entire gene pools. And so
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody watching is probably aware of patterns they recognize within commercials, especially within by Western corporations, that might
Yeah.
relate to some that might relate to that one way or another.
Yeah. Coca-Cola's most recent,
Yeah.
most
And so
diversity train.
and so in my mind, that schism then, although you'd never see an academic say this or any book written on this, when we deal with progress or progressivism, I see this as a sort of remnant of at a spiritual level. The way I perceive it is Satan, the same way in which I believe he used the chosen people of the Old Testament, the way that he uses that group, inverts God's use of that vessel now, is what he was trying to do really with post-schism. And so the idea of amending the synodal structure, adding to the Christian faith, the papacy, this idea of progress, right? We're getting better by adding to it. Progressivism is a movement away from God. And so it was that God was present in the West through Orthodox Christianity. And that
Yeah.
literally Satan then took that, right? God said it was going to be that way for 1,000 years. We had it for 1,000 years. And then
Yeah.
after that 1,000-year period, what we have literally in less than 100 years, we have the schism. And so since then, I just see progress. European history, just look at it. It's just a continual, subtle, moving further away until you can't help but be where we're at now. And so now the West is the vehicle of evil in the world. Despite pagans and all the different people, different world religions around the world, they're still subjected by, to real evil that.
Dude, that's crazy, right? Well, the pagan, like a lot of these pagan cultures ended up converting very peacefully, right? Being convinced very peacefully. And yeah, no, it's just, it seems like I feel like pagans are less, I mean, this is not for me to judge, right? But I feel
Right.
like in general, some of these like pagans are less difficult to deal with than like really, crazy Protestant cults where they're like,
No doubt.
they're basically the same thing.
Right.
Like what's really the difference between like the neo-pagans and a lot like, Jim Jones, Protestant cults, stuff like
Right.
that. It's crazy, man. And when did this idea, you probably have a way better idea about this than I do. What about this idea of progress, right? Like this is completely antithetical to, this is very different from the idea of biblical anthropology, whereas
Right.
we are fallen, right? And the world is fallen due to our sin, due to our turning away from God. And, the trajectory that scripture and the revelation give doesn't seem to have much to do with secular humanistic progress and science and reason reorganizing and putting the world in order. How did this idea develop in the West? Like, we had Gnosticism, which is an ancient thing, right? You had the mystery
Right.
cults, which were always around, but when did the West really embrace this idea of like progress towards like this chiliastic utopia type thing?
Right. To put a pinpoint on, I think would be obviously difficult. I think the schism is a remnant, or at least reflective of that idea, whether it's present or not. Because when you look at European history, at least religiously speaking, so schism's 1054. Well, just in a couple, 140, 200 years, we already have these institutions over in Spain where the Muslims and the Jews and the Christians are coming together to learn each other's knowledge, because this idea of somehow, again, perennialism, you see the concept of perennialism emerging already, in the 1200s. So they're going to these erudite schools, and well, we can learn that, and Jewish Kabbalah becomes Christian Kabbalah, and Sufism. So perennialism emerges. With the Renaissance, we get humanism as we understand humanism, man as the epitome of creation, but really in a worldly, secular sense. And so you have the Da Vinci's of the world, again, focusing their work on man. Well, then right after the Renaissance, of course, we get Hermeticism in the Renaissance. So we get all the magical ideas, the Neoplatonism. Again, perennialism is now spreading. It's becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. And so literally 40, 50 years later, after the Hermetic corpus was translated, we have the Protestant Reformation. So again, all these ideas are related to this idea of progress, that we're going to move into a better place than what we had before. And so the Protestants themselves saw them doing that to the Catholic Church. And so that set forth then the Industrial Revolution, the Enlightenment, all this different stuff, which again is all that somehow he's getting a better grasp on reality. And so now by the Enlightenment, well, we don't need God to do it because we worship reason. Because we, again, through the humanism that emerged 200 years earlier as a really venerative idea in the Renaissance, now we're in the Enlightenment. Oh, there's nothing really transcendent, and we worship our own reason. And so we can see the total presuppositions necessary for the world today present in the 1700s. Now, they still had Protestants, you still had the deists, all these different people, but the intelligentsia certainly didn't think that way. And so then you get to America. We celebrate secularism, but secularism insinuates that religion, all religions are equal because they're all in the same category. Therefore, it doesn't matter what your religion is. In a secular nation, they're all equal. So it already perpetuates a presupposition of perennialism, which is relativism. So it puts you in this relativistic framework, and then it says, really, the only thing that is really authoritative is the government. Secularism itself says the government takes priority over God, and God only exists in certain frameworks, the church, your family, your home.
Then the government replaces God, right? I guess that's kind of the natural outcome.
Exactly. You can see the evolution of thought. Yeah.
The brute power of groups of men's will coming together, assembling, forming like Voltron, and then, moving forward towards, the machine of progress, just moving forwards, chugging forward. But it's like such a consumptive, just an all-consuming power that ends up destroying the very nature that it claims to worship, right? It's like even the fallen world that we live in now, there is beautiful order to it. And, there are certain cycles where if you do kind of, tap into these cycles and, under certain ways of understanding how to graze animals properly, when to move animals, when to plant your crops, these things are important. That's important knowledge that was passed down through the generations. Now, where that knowledge came from, like if you look at some of the, well, not necessarily scriptural, but like the Book of Enoch, which was referenced in Scripture. In First Enoch, they do talk about some of the knowledge of crops and stuff like that, and grazing being passed down from these fallen angels, these giants getting passed down to men. So. But that all that aside, whether the knowledge was given to us in, through blasphemous means or not, there are ways that you can live that are far less destructive, that do result in, us being able to kind of live in dignity and peace.
Right.
Right. And the peasantry seem to be much more tapped into that than the modern world of progress. And right now, now people who do grow up on farms, they just want to get out of that. My people who grow up in rural areas, they want to get the heck out of their hillbilly country bumpkin stuff, and they want to go to where stuff's happening. They want to go to LA. They want to go to New York. They want to be in the movies. They want to put the pee in the poo-poo, right? Like that's they want to leave their traditional life behind to become part of progress. Right. And it's sad because what we ended up doing is going backwards to a certain extent. As far as the idea of progress in the West, we ended up, wanting to leave California, wanting to leave cities, suburbs, and move into a rural area and become, kind of connected to the abilities, connected to the production of our own food, right? And responsible for the production of our own food, responsible for tending to our own land. And that was part of why we ended up choosing to live where we live, because it was a place where we could do it relatively affordably if we were able to economically make it, make ourselves, solvent economically, which, by the grace of God, we were able to through the vehicle of the internet, right? So through the blasphemous, disgusting Silicon Valley and YouTube and like, the the afterbirth of, of Silicon Valley's AI demon that they're creating over there, we've actually been able to, still live this relatively somewhat traditional life and be involved in the production of our food and have our family here. And so yeah, it's a
Right.
crazy world, right?
And
I think progress is, go
well, I
ahead.
was going to say that it shows how God uses evil for good, because we can clearly talk about the internet and technology and how these things are most often literally developed for control,
Yeah.
for population control, manipulation in one way or another. Yet at the same time, the consequences that they can't predict, that are outside human cognition, it's like, God still blesses. So he's able to bless you. And this idea of progress and what you just said frames the conversation. That's why I told you, but I framed it the spirit of life. You talked
Mm.
about how basically you are at the forward edge of progress itself, literally being in Southern California. You couldn't
I
get
thought I was, man. I like,
right,
I'm at the forefront of evolution, man. I'm like, we're dropping acid. We're living in California. We're the culture creators. We
right,
know what's going to be cool 10 years before it's cool. Like that's where we thought we were, but ended up just like, no, I don't want any of this. This is BS.
right.
Right?
And so in realizing that, you reverted. And so when I named the stream family, farming, and the future is the past. I think that's the realization for anybody that is really kind of cued into what's going on in the world, is that
Mm.
there is a logos to, there is, in a very E. Michael Jones way, a logos just,
Oh gosh. Oh God.
but there is an order to everything, in the same thing which we relate to nature and the way we live our lives. And
Mm.
so now I want to pick up to where you were talking about, you and Jessica first started talking about keto, developing Primal Edge Health, because
Mm.
that is now, I think, your process, and also moving to the past, but it was your future. And that, I think, is what I want you to talk about for so many young men right now. They want to set up a lifestyle that's similar to like you have with your family. I mean, especially any Orthodox man,
Yeah.
realize their priorities have already changed to be in this point, to watch this stream. They're already interested in truth. They want to connect with God. They want to find somebody to love. They want to have a family, and they just they want to use their skill to do something in the world and make money and provide. And so talk then about that journey for you. You've now moved to Ecuador. You and your wife are there. When you started the channel, did you already have your child? You already
Oh, well, no, yeah, we did. We did shoot because we wouldn't have ever come upon, like, we were kind of just nutritional nihilists kind of at that point because we had gone through like experiment with plant-based stuff and that quick dead end on that. Not enjoyable. I spent like a year, almost 2 years, like trying to figure out, oh, maybe you don't need so much meat. Maybe you could live without any meat. And no, we ended up being humbled from that idea. And yeah, so our daughter was born in 2012.
12,
And
okay. 14,
yeah,
15
so we
was the
decided,
YouTube channel.
I knew I wanted to have children, man. I was in college. I did, like at the end of my university career, I knew I wanted to have children. I also knew that it was going to be nearly impossible to find a woman in the university system that wanted to have children with me.
Right.
It was just like these women had worldly aspirations. At the time, I just was. It was just like, man, this is. That's why I told you earlier. I was like, I decided, look, the next one is like, I'm not going to date anymore. I'm sick of these girlfriends. I'm sick of these flippant relationships. And like, I kind of want to be serious, but then they just end up, I either throw it in the trash or it just ends up falling apart or something stupid. Like, oh, you didn't, like, I had this girlfriend, the last girlfriend I had before Jessica. I remember like, I had this motorcycle. It was really stupid. Another really stupid thing. I had this motorcycle that my roommate, it is a Buell X1 Lightning, and it was like 1,000 cc. Like it was a big motorcycle. This thing was fast, and I'd never ridden even a dirt bike. And I had this like street bike all of a sudden, and so and I didn't even know how to ride it. And my roommate was gone. He lived in Humboldt County, and he would just disappear for like a month or so, and then come back. And I was just like, great roommate, right? Pays rent, disappears, like
Right.
got the place to
Everything you
myself.
want.
Best roommate you could ever have when you're 20 years old. And we got along really well. Like he was like an artist and he would sing and play guitar. And we thought we were all like artsy fartsy cool people. And we thought we were rebels and outlaws. But he left this motorcycle with me. And I'm like, dude, I'll buy this thing from you. Sell it to me. And I ended up like starting it up and going and riding up Empire Grade behind the university up towards where they have this like crazy Lockheed Martin facility right next to the Mormon church piece of land. Strange place.
Hmm.
So I drive all the way up and ride this motorcycle up Empire Grade. No idea what I'm doing. Almost wrecked. Run out of gas. Had no gas in it. Had no cell phone service. So I had to like catch a ride down, hitchhike down. Yeah, this girl I'm dating at the time, she lives like an hour away, and she's like calling me and texting me like, "Where are you? I'm trying to call you," and starts like yelling at me. I'm just like, I'm so pissed that I almost killed myself and the motorcycle broke down. Trying to figure out what I did. She's like bitching at me, and we just broke up right then. Like we'd been together for like 6 months or something, and it just ended right there because I got kind of mad at her, and then she said something. I was just like, "Fine, screw you," and hung up on her. And that was it. It was like the relationship was over
Wow.
over me missing some phone calls. Right. So it's just like after this, I'm like, man, I got to find a legitimate woman who will have children with me, who's mature enough. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to find this. But I just decided because I had this conversation with a friend of mine. He told me, I was just copying him. He told me the next girl I'm with, I'm going to marry her. I'm going to have children with her. Shout out to Pete.
Pete, give me a ring, bud. I'm looking for one.
Pete, my high school buddy Pete. He's like, next one I'm with, I'm marrying her. None of my friends wanted to get married, right? I'm like 20, 21, almost 21. It wasn't even 21, 20. None of my friends wanted to get married. I'm just like, I'm sick of this. And anyway, me and Jessica ended up coming together, and it worked out. I don't know how it worked out. There was hurdles, right? Like it wasn't necessarily easy.
Right.
You know, she had her feminist friends and stuff who were like, you used to be an independent woman. Like, we were like reading this email from her friends, like, we traveled all around Spain. You used to be such an independent woman. I don't know, like, what's wrong with you? And I just like, she knew something was weird too, but I just explained to her what I saw. I was like, this chick is crazy and has daddy issues. And,
Right.
and she's trying to drag you along in her miserable, promiscuous life. And, you know,
Right.
we had those hurdles and we had all that kind of stuff to deal with. But I mean, Jessica, she had a really good like motherly instinct. You know, she would take care of our drunk friends. That's my advice to you guys out there. Find a woman. Don't just go by raw physical attraction. Although obviously you got to find a woman that you're physically attracted to,
Right.
right? You got to find a beautiful woman, but find a woman that has a good motherly instinct, that takes care of her family, that loves her family, that doesn't hate her dad. Hopefully, if she does hate her dad, you better help her learn to love her dad, and
Yeah.
uh, and and marry her. Right? Find the one that takes care of their drunk friends, the one that's not that has some motherly instinct, and marry her. So yeah, we ended up coming together really young, and I told her I wanted to have a family, and she was like, "Cool, I want to have a family also." Um, and yeah, ended up we had Ariana was born when I was 23. Yeah, 23. She was born in
Wow.
2000. No, I was 2012. I was born in 1987, so I would have been 25 when Ariana was born. So we moved to Ecuador when I was like 23. Ariana was born when I was 24 or 25. Anyway, I don't know. The timelines, the basic
Right.
arithmetic is beyond me. Um, 7:30 in the evening. Come on, can't do basic arithmetic. Um, but yeah, you know, we had her in 2012, and we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have any idea how we would be able to provide for our children, right? Like we just had faith. That's what we did, and it was we had faith in God in a, you know, hey, I read the Bible and I've had some mystical experiences kind of way, which was more than insufficient. It was not enough at all. Thank God we ended up finding Orthodoxy, and you know, that's been a huge blessing and really put things together for us in so many ways. But yeah, you know, I mean, we had our daughter. We had at the time we had faith in God in kind of more of a Protestant way. We'd pray together. We'd read the Bible. You know, we taught our child and taught Ariana about God when she was young, when she was really little, and she's amazing. Ariana has so much faith. Like
Oh wow.
we just started teaching her about God is the most important thing.
Right.
That's what's real. That's who created us. We're here because of God. Like we started teaching her that when she was 2, 3 years old. So yeah, I mean that was, I forget the question was. You're just
Well,
talking
how
about
did that?
family.
Yeah, no, no, no. Don't worry, brother. We're hitting on a lot of different stuff. So, what I was curious is that transition, because you're talking about veganism, you're talking about the beginning of the Primal Edge Health. So I guess that's 2014, 2015. You're already a father. I'm curious how the
Oh,
carnivore stuff, how that gets inserted into your journey.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, so well, I told you about Ariana with the dental caries,
Right, right, right.
realizing
So you start looking into
studying this.
diet and the Western deficiencies.
Yes, yeah, nutrient deficiencies, the importance of fat soluble vitamins came up, and then we ended up seeing the physical ramifications of giving proper animal foods to your child. Right, so she was having a lot of raw milk, cream. She used to eat butter. She loves it. I mean, she still does. She would just eat butter and she loves liver and bone broth and stuff like that. Teeth hardened up. Adult teeth are perfectly fine. I ended up coming to a
Beautiful.
carnivore. Well, because I was involved in like the whole keto realm, right? There's initially like when I first heard of carnivore, I was like, that's unnecessary. I don't want to do that. That's
Right.
stupid. You know, low carb has its benefits, obviously, but that doesn't mean zero carbs better. These people are probably just zealots. That's what I thought. And then I talked to this guy who had brain cancer, and he had to use a zero carbohydrate carnivorous diet. His name's Andrew Scarborough. Shout out to Andrew, great guy. Andrew Scarborough used a carnivorous diet, and he was eating like lamb, like what they're called sweetbreads, and a lot of organs. And he was taking a lot of all that stuff that we did. He just went like to the next level because he had to. He found that a ketogenic diet, when he included things like coconut oil, he would get seizures because of like anti-nutrients such as salicylates and whatnot.
Wow.
So talking to him kind of opened up my eyes to the
Hmm.
fact that, hey, you can live off of just animal foods, but I'm never going to do that. I don't need to do that. I was just like, who cares? I don't need to do that. When, I mean, I always had kind of like some on and off digestive issues growing up.
Hmm.
And there have been times when it gets better, times when it gets worse. After I had that major injury in my hip, it screwed up my digestion quite a bit.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
they're like, there's certain muscles that are involved with
Sure.
digestion. They're all tied in, all the fascia tissue around your organs and your psoas muscle, which is this is what the longest muscle in the body is called the psoas, the PSOAS.
I didn't
You
know
guys
that.
want to look up the PSOAS. It's a really important muscle, and it's involved in diaphragmatic movement, right? When your diaphragm moves up and down,
Hmm.
that connects physiologically also with anxiety, anger. If you're not having proper breathing, you're not going to get proper oxygen levels. You're going to manifest disease quicker, be less resilient in the face of infections and stuff like that. So I think I had some underlying gut infections that I'd had probably since I was a kid. I remember having, after my fourth grade round of happy, healthy, stabby injections, I had some like digestive issues. And So just like on and off stuff, on and
Right.
off funky stuff with the digestion. And I went through like a round of having really poor digestion. It was kind of a stressful period where we were in a transition phase as far as like economically what we were doing. We're trying to figure out where we want to live. We started thinking we wanted to move away from Ecuador. Like maybe we'll go back to the US, maybe we'll go to Europe, maybe we were just thinking about going somewhere else. And we were in a transition phase. During that time, I started getting some like worsening digestive symptoms and stuff, and just found that I couldn't really even digest a lot of the plant foods that I once enjoyed.
Wow.
So yeah, I ended up kind of trying carnivore after hearing about it from so many people. I was like, okay, well, this is what I'm able to digest now, so that's what I'm going to eat. And yeah, it actually ended up being incredibly beneficial for me as far as like um, digestion goes. Kind of like IBS type stuff. Able to keep it completely remitted using an all animal based diet, focusing heavily on steaks, red meat, which I already enjoyed, right? I
Right.
already loved bone broth, I already loved liver, I already loved beef, but I would eat, I would do a lot of vegetables and broccoli and stuff like that. And um, so, yeah, I ended up trying it. It worked really well. Jessica uses it for, other reasons as well, and ends up helping her out a lot with health issues that she's had too. So, yeah, it was almost through kind of just necessity. I mean, I ended up trying it and experimenting with it. It was like, I feel a heck of a lot better. I feel a heck of a lot better, and just kind of took it from there. Took it from there. Kind of I do what works. It's not for me. There's no like ideological attachment to diet. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't think about diet at all if I didn't have to. I wish I didn't have to think about it. I could just eat whatever I wanted and be healthy and fit. But I ended up kind of being out of necessity, and I do what I can to keep myself alive and want to be able to hopefully reach a ripe old age and
Right.
be able to have some more time to repent and to
Yeah.
maybe pass on some good stuff to the children. And as far as what their spiritual life is like, and
Right.
yeah, man. So it's been really amazing. It's been a huge blessing as far as health goes.
Oh,
As
I
far
know for myself. Like I said, I listened to you talk about carnivore like 2018, and I was following Dr. Sean Baker, and he
Mhm.
had gone on Rogan and everything, and I heard Jay talk about how he lost so much weight from carnivore. And 2018 was also where Jordan Peterson and his daughter were speaking openly about carnivore. So it was like those sort of areas I had been tuned into and started hearing all that stuff. So in 2020, as some of the people watching it already heard, I decided, you know what, I'm going to step up my beef diet. I didn't do full carnivore. Like I said, basically ate a steak and potatoes diet because I wanted to bulk up and gain some muscle. So I did that, and after about a month or so, I feel like I really noticed just a liveliness, a difference in myself just by eating so much more meat regularly every day. So, and then in the evening, sometimes I would just have one huge steak, so it'd be almost a carnivore meal. I wouldn't even have potatoes because I was so full.
Yeah.
I would just only eat meat, and and I am now in the best shape of my life. I feel stronger. Lent's coming up now, so I'm gonna have to navigate that whole thing for the first time. But
Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard one for sure. I mean, I'm not able to eat Lenten foods, so it's like for me, it's I would love to be able to do Orthodox fasting, but it just trashes me,
right.
right? Like if I start eating potatoes and stuff regularly, I just become a fart machine. I'll be toilet bound. I'll be having 16 poops a day, rather than like a single one wipe wonder. It's like it goes. I wish I could do it, and it's hard, but yeah, I think yeah, it's interesting too when you look at fasting and what is considered fasting in the Orthodox world, and that's abstinence from animal foods. Right.
Right.
That's the strict fast is abstinence from animal foods, and that's what the Lenten fast is, and it's difficult.
Right.
Now, when you look at like vegans and these people, they're basically fasting to they're fasting, but not for God.
No.
Like the nicest way you could say it, I guess.
Yeah.
Like you can say a little harsher and say they're fasting to demons, but like I mean,
Well, in
it's crazy.
Orthodoxy doesn't recognize the fast as a lifestyle, right? The fast is a specific period of time to actually give significance to the things which we're fasting from. So in Orthodoxy, the theology is not that meat is bad, right? A vegetarian or vegan says, oh, look, Orthodoxy, see, you fast, see, if you want to get closer to God, you stop eating meat. No. Our theology is that it's so good to give glory to God, we will choose to not engage in it. We're
Yeah.
not saying it's not that it's bad at all. That's actually the exact opposite of why we are fasting. And so
Yep.
it's a total different reversal of why you're doing it. The point to do it is almost it recognizes that without the meat, your body's going to kind of be broken down a bit. But that's the point.
Right. It is. It's abstinence from it. It's an ascetic practice. It's not mortifying and destroying the flesh,
Right.
but I mean, you look at some of the lives of some of the saints. I mean, look at like Saint John Maximovich. He fasted profusely through his whole life, right? And if you read the life of Saint John Maximovich, he couldn't really speak very well, and he had to go to a speech coach at a certain point in his life because he was unable to move his jaw much during fasting because he had so like he desired God so much, and he kind of crucified his flesh so much that he did end up experiencing even some physical
Right.
detriment, and that's not the point of it. Just
Right.
I mean, just because Saint John Maximovich would go there doesn't mean that like that's gonna, if you do that, you're automatically gonna get superpower levitation, and
Right.
you know
That's how you get telepathy.
your telepathy meter is gonna like boop. No, that's not how it works. But yeah, you did. That's a great explanation of what fasting is, David.
Right.
And it is a funny argument you get from vegans. Like, oh, look, the monastics, they
Right.
don't eat meat, but they're eating fish all the time. They're eating eggs.
Right.
They're having dairy, and they're not doing this because they believe meat is sinful. They're not doing it because they think that they're going to recreate the Garden of Eden and they're going to create this heaven on earth if everybody just stops eating animals. That's
Right.
not their ideology. That's a Gnostic idea that's
I,
been around for
yeah.
thousands of years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the same thing is true with sex. So again, that Orthodox theology, um, yeah, the bishop isn't married, he doesn't have children, neither is the monk. That doesn't mean that sex and having family is bad. What that means is that there's particular ways in which we can go about to try to give devotion. Same thing with the fasting from meat. And the fact that I think Father Deacon Dr. Ananias is also on carnivore. I'm not totally positive. I believe it's
Yeah.
greatly helped his wife.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. We've talked about that on my channel as well with Father Deacon Ananias. He uses carnivore, and that there have been a lot of people who benefited greatly from a carnivorous approach. I think none of those people would have done it, if they've just. Very few people end up doing full carnivore because they're like, oh yeah, I just want to try it out. Man. I just want to give up all the sweets and all the fun foods that I'm addicted to, just to try it out. Most people get to it because they're like chronic inflammatory conditions, arthritis, digestive conditions, Crohn's disease, IBS, stuff like that, colitis. Like people get into it for that, and they end up getting remission of these things. So it ends up being a trade-off where it's like, yeah, you're going to give up eating bread, you're going to give up eating cakes, but hey, you're going to enjoy some steaks, and you're going to enjoy not having, chronically inflamed joints, or not, going to the bathroom 20 times a day, or not having to, whatever it is, and maybe not having crazy anxiety and depression like Michaela Peterson.
right.
Um, like Jay Dyer, it cured Jay Dyer of, most people don't know this. It got like 85% cure of his Down syndrome when he did a carnivore diet. No, I'm just kidding. Jay Dyer actually cured his homosexuality using a no.
It's amazing.
We love you, Jay.
Really is a
Big
miracle
shout out to
diet.
Jay though, also because as far as me becoming Orthodox and learning about Orthodoxy, he was instrumental in that. I
Yeah.
would have never heard about Orthodoxy if it weren't for Jay's work.
Yeah, so
And
let's get into that. So you start your channel, you and your wife do keto. You're really starting to get privy about the diet stuff, making content about that. When do you come in contact with Jay? When do you hear about Discover Orthodoxy? When then are you in the Orthodox Church?
yeah, all right, awesome. Yeah, so all right, so I talked about kind of like I guess you call it Protestantism. I didn't never considered myself a Protestant. I just considered myself somebody who believed in God, who
Right.
believed in Jesus. I would have considered myself a Christian, um, but there were gaps, right? There were holes in the system. Namely, like you could read the Bible, you're going to come upon certain scripture talking about elders in the church, talking about priests, talking about bishops.
Right.
So I was like, always, where are the bishops? Where are the priests? Right? If the gates of hell shall not prevail against the church, where is the church?
Right.
I wanted that. That's what I was searching for 10 years, right? Since I was 20 years old and first opened the Bible and had
Right.
these, strange experiences, and then ended up a year or two later, through, just having basically a worldview, my worldview completely shattered by the darkness of the world, and seeing the evil in the world and experiencing that wickedness and experiencing it not just in the world but in myself too, and then submitting to God and seeking God consciously at that point. But then it was like, where is the church, right?
Right.
Where's the baptism, right? You're supposed to be baptized. Where is
Right.
this, right? And I'd known some like Protestants. I'd known some people who were really genuine seekers of God, and people who really did seem to have some, strong connection with God. But, it's like Christ breathed on the disciples and gave them the Holy Spirit and told them to go baptize in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Where was that? I wanted that,
Right.
but I didn't see it. There was no power in what I saw in the, like, evangelical movement. Obviously never interested me.
Right.
The, what's it called? The Roman Catholic Church never interested me whatsoever. It just seemed like a vampire cult to me.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I couldn't, I didn't know what I was looking for, being in Ecuador, was exposed to Protestants and Roman Catholics, and met some Protestants who had some good ideas, but then also saw the downsides of Protestantism of like I said earlier, like people kind of just use the Bible and interpret it to mean whatever they want in the moment. You know, it's like, I'll just quote scripture and the scripture means this at this moment, you know. Or I have a Protestant friend that was like, yeah, you know, the scripture says that there are many mansions. Was it, in the kingdom of heaven, there are many mansions. Is that what
I think there's many rooms in my father's mansion or something like that.
There are many rooms in my father's mansion. So it was like, oh, that means that there could be people saved outside of Christ. That was how he tried to justify. I'm like, well, I don't think that's true, but whatever, dude.
Right.
You know, that kind of stuff. But, you know, it was like just people that would kind of just use the Bible as their own magical grimoire, basically. Right. And that didn't, you know, the people that are like, I'm praying for you. It's like what they're really saying is like, I'm praying on you. You know, right. It's like that. Those kind of people just kind of turned me off a little bit, right?
Or so sometimes it's almost demeaning the way that they talk about praying for you. It's almost like a signaling. Oh, well, I'm almost sympathetic. You know, it's like signaling that you're at a lesser status.
I'm praying that you're going to come up to my level one day.
Right.
You'll come
right.
to a Bible study.
It's so
brother.
Condescending the way they want to talk about praying for you.
Praying that you'll come to my Bible study. Yeah, it just gets weird. So. A lot of that. And then I saw, you know, I mean, just like all these Protestants, their kids always end up as atheists. It was weird to me. Like all my friends I grew up with, they went to Harvest. Mm-hmm. They're all atheists. I got one friend that I grew up with that I reconnected with recently. He's Orthodox. And his spiritual father is Father Josiah Trenum.
What?
So, yeah, my buddy Kyle, and I gotta reconnect with him again. We talked like once in the last year, but yeah, that was crazy because it was like I grew up with him. I grew up with all these kids whose parents were really kind of zealous converts into non-denominational, right. like, you know, Harvest Crusade style Christianity where they'd have Bible studies and none of them drank. They had all quit doing drugs from like whatever they were doing in the 70s.
Straight edge.
Yeah, well, they were, you know, straight edge, but, you know, like Southern California straight Christians who are like nice people, you know, like solid people. They're all kids, like all these girls, their daughters ended up being sluts and their sons ended up being degenerates. It was just weird, right? Like, why did that happen? Why weren't they able to pass on what it seemed like they gained, right? They had a conversion. It was obviously legitimate conversion in their generation, but then the next generation just got swallowed up by like modernism and pornography and all this stuff. And here I am, like, you know, the like degenerate whose family was atheist and who didn't take it seriously, like the Bible studies in the church and all that, thought it was just like kind of a joke. And right. Those kids whose parents took it seriously, they all ended up atheists, and I end up, you know, believing in God and becoming a Christian. So yeah, man, and Orthodoxy, I ended up discovering and learning about the Orthodox Church through some of Jay's lectures, right? I had heard, you know, listen to some of his stuff on Esoteric Hollywood because I told you earlier, I had like a blog back in 2007, 2008 that I had on WordPress, and was learning about Freemasonry and reading about Western esotericism, reading Manly P. Hall. I got all these. Santa Cruz, you know, like Santa Cruz and Berkeley, you go to used bookstores, you got that Manly P. Hall book. Yeah.
Secret teaching, baby.
I got it somewhere else, but I have the one from 1970, and it's got the color fold out picture.
Oh my gosh, that's like collector's edition.
Oh, it was crazy. It's like a several $100s. It's worth a lot. It's not hardcover. It's the soft cover one. It's kind of falling apart now. But I remember reading that. It's got William Shakespeare, and then it's got a wax paper of does this book have pictures in it that you have?
It does, but they're just like this.
The Shakespeare page, does it have? There's a page in the one that I've got, and it's got Shakespeare, and then superimposed over him is a drawing on wax paper of Francis Bacon, showing because
I don't have that one.
Yeah, it's weird. So that I had that book, and I read like Morals and Dogma, and then I mean, you go into a used bookstore in Santa Cruz, and you go to the metaphysics section and the occult section, and you're just going to find all the theosophy stuff. That's when I was really into that stuff, when I was like in the early 20s. You know, I read Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine and Blavatsky, and then Alice Bailey, the the externalization of the hierarchy and all this stupid
Which takes
stuff.
you directly into the traditional school, which is the academic form of perennialism, right? The Rene
Yeah,
Guénon. I know Dyer was into that before he got more serious about what he does, but that all that mysticism, it takes you directly into the theology, really, of globalism.
yeah, exactly. So I'm reading that stuff, and I'm like thinking some of it's true, but then I'm also studying all the New World Order stuff, and I'm seeing like, wow, like they're talking about this. And then I read Manly P. Hall's book. So at this time, I'm like in between being a Protestant and like an occultist in certain ways. And it was just, I think it's something a lot of people can relate to. And it sounds like, and I really related to Jay's lectures, which I discovered when I was, maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago or so. And it took me about like, 2 years of kind of off and on listening to some of Jay's lectures to even come to like, I didn't realize he talked about orthodoxy until maybe, I don't know, like a year after first hearing some of his lectures
Mm-hmm.
on Hollywood and occult and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he starts talking about occult, not occult, about orthodoxy and theology and stuff like that. And just his arguments were so sound and ended up convincing me in a lot of ways that it was onto something. So I started on a recommendation from I don't know if it was one of Jay's streams or just from searching about orthodoxy. Father Seraphim Rose's book. I think Jay recommended it or was on his reading list or something. Nihilism by Father Seraphim Rose. So I
Mm-hmm.
got the book Nihilism by Father Seraphim Rose and just blew my mind because I related to it so much. So I read that, and then I read Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future, and that was just like a ton of bricks, right? This is so true because this is everything that I criticized about the West. This guy's criticizing,
Right. And stuff that
but
you once believed.
yeah, exactly. So then he's just knocking down all this, straw man Christianity and evangelical Christianity and all this
Right.
falseness, and then talking about all the UFO deception and all these things that I had already believed in and agreed with him, and then stuff that I used to believe that I'd come to see kind of in a more clear light, and he elucidated so perfectly some of my experiences. And yeah, I'd say that Father Seraphim Rose was kind of the final nail in the coffin of
Mm.
kind of my old way of seeing Christianity, and just realizing that this is what I was looking for. This is what I wanted to find the church, and it seems like this might be it.
So,
So Father
so
Rose was instrumental in that, and then I read some other books, theological works, and
mm.
like Losky and stuff like that, and I was convinced. And we're in Ecuador. There's no Orthodox in Ecuador.
That's what I was going to ask is like, because even for me, it's like you come to the intellectual decision. Okay, well, Orthodoxy is unique. There's something here. It took
Yeah,
me still a while to say, okay, I'm going to become Orthodox or all this stuff. I started going to the church and
yeah.
stuff like that. So now you've made the intellectual decision. You've come to the conclusion. Where's the closest church? How do you get chrismated or baptized or you'd be baptized because you didn't grow up Christian. So
Yeah,
how
we'll talk
that?
about that. Also, the Serbs are, I mean, at least our spiritual father, he's here he's an archimandrite, and he's Serbian. He knew he was going to become a monk when he was 9. And he grew up as a monk, and he's on a mission. He's a missionary. So he is very staunch on baptizing everybody. He's like, we baptize all converts. Like, that's it. And I think Father Seraphim Rose was of a similar
Right.
opinion. He would baptize all converts. He said, we baptize all converts. This is important. I agree. But, what's interesting, I was having a conversation with my wife. I'm not an authority on anything. So it's like, it doesn't matter if I agree. Like, it doesn't matter what I say because it's like, I have no authority in the church at all. I'm a layman. I'm a newbie. And so, yeah, we're talking, and I didn't realize, but through reading Father Seraphim Rose's his life and works, this book,
Yeah. I haven't read that.
oh man, dude, it's so good. You're gonna love this book. The first it's like a spiritual biography. It's amazing. I've never read a book like this. It's so deeply researched. And Father Damascene, Hieromonk Damascene,
Mm-hmm.
is was obviously very close to Father Seraphim Rose. He lives in his cell on the monastery. So it's an amazing book. But he is charismated, right? So, you know, I mean, it's, you know, he's a lot of Serbians actually consider Father Seraphim Rose a saint already. They call him Saint Seraphim Rose.
And he was chrismated into the church?
He was charismated.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
wasn't aware of that. See, I was
Isn't that
chrismated.
amazing?
I asked to be baptized, but
I
my
understand.
priest wouldn't. And he gave me an answer that it sufficed me to say, all right, fine. He said,
Yeah.
well, Patrick, if I baptized you, that would insinuate that my entrancy into Orthodoxy is invalid. And because
Yeah.
you came from the same tradition I came from, Methodist Christianity, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to rebaptize you. And I thought about, well, that's fair. You know, I like my priest is old. He's an 80. I like the guy. I wanted him to be the priest that I enter into Orthodoxy under. And so
Yeah.
even though down in my heart, I wanted to be
Yeah.
baptized, but
Totally understandable. It's totally understandable. But yeah, because I was thinking about that too. Because you know, like you, I know a lot of people. I have a lot of friends who also were charismated in, and I don't think it. I mean, there's some people who, oh, that's, you know, you shouldn't do that.
Right.
But I don't think anybody would say that, oh, that's incorrect. That's your fault. Or so, you know, I don't think it would, you know, become an issue. But, you know, hey, Father Seraphim Rose, by many considered a saint, brought, by the grace of God, millions of people into Orthodoxy probably
Right.
by this point. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think millions of people have come back to Orthodoxy or to Orthodoxy for the first time through Father Seraphim Rose. He was charismated too. So I think that's that's something that I just learned in this book. I just got to they don't even talk about his the first like 400 pages of the book or 300 pages of the book are just before he becomes a Christian, before he becomes Orthodox. Great book, the Life and Works of Father Seraphim Rose, like 1,000 pages.
Dang.
And I'm like 600 pages in. It's amazing. One of my
I'll
favorite
definitely
books.
get that. I don't have one of the books I don't have of his.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so good. And it's takes a while to get through it, right? Because it's 1,000 pages. But I stayed up. There were a few nights where I barely slept because I was just going through it, just chugging through the first sections. And he had a similar experience to us as well, man. Like he wrapped up in nihilism, reading Nietzsche.
Well, and he was. I know that he had an experience with homosexuality, but during that period, I mean, he's in the '60s, psychedelic. I'm sure he did LSD, all that stuff. He was right in the heart of all that. So
yeah, I didn't know that he had experience with homosexuality. He talks about having experiences with, like, he had this woman he almost married, and he talks about the psychedelics and the the hedonism and stuff like that. And
that was just from my understanding of Father Seraphim Rose. Everything that I haven't read that book, so maybe it's not in there. But from my understanding, and anybody can correct me, but I understand that he was a repentant homosexual and that he was vocal about that. And the criticizing homosexuality and talking about how it destroyed parts of his soul when he was engaged in that.
I didn't get to that part yet. I haven't seen that part yet. Could be true.
But for me and like for Seraphim Rose, one of the things that I think about then, it's like how well he encapsulates the West's entry into Orthodoxy, right? It's because what he does then, a way that you could look at it, is he's almost an archetypal representation of the problems with the West. So the nihilism, the psychedelics, the degeneracy, the homosexuality, the whatever. And then all that leads him eventually into Orthodoxy, becoming arguably one of the greatest American saints that we have. So
absolutely. And not a saint yet, but I guess the
Serbians, in the Rokor, I think he is, right? In Rokor, he's recognized as a saint.
That's cool. I didn't know that. I hope sure. I recognize him as. I accidentally say Saint Seraphim Rose sometimes.
Right.
It just seems.
I know Antioquia, where I'm in, they don't recognize Father Seraphim Rose as a saint. And I know some people I know Father Seraphim Rose is a divisive figure within Orthodoxy. People have very different opinions about him, and have very strong opinions in whatever disposition they have. So,
which always surprises me. It's like I don't understand. Oh no, people are saying they can't find the copy for less than $900. This happened in the last year with all of his books. This is crazy.
Dang. $900. Well, I think I might be waiting for the next printing.
They're going to print Genesis, Creation, and Early Man. I emailed them. You can email St. Herman of Alaska's Monastery. You can ask them about that. Let's look up St. Herman Press. Let's see if they have the book on St. Herman Press, because if you go to their website, what happens is Amazon they just play funny games.
Right.
Let's see. Life Works. Let's see if they got it here. No. That's a shame. That's a very upsetting. His life and works. St. Herman Monastery. Wait, here it is. No, that's the Orthodox word. Anyways, hopefully they'll reprint it. You can email them. You can email
Right.
St.
Looks
Herman
like
Galactus.
Pano in the chat said he also emailed St. Herman about Genesis.
Yeah, they're supposed. I emailed them about that because I'd recommended it to a lot of people. Here it is. Holycross.org has it for nope, out of stock. Oh man, that's a shame. Well, you can find a PDF and you can print it out, and out of stock at Walmart. Walmart sold it. Well, that is very upsetting. But anyways, they said they're going to print another edition of Orthodoxy, not Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future, of Genesis, Creation, Early Man by the summer, is what they told me when I emailed them.
Great.
But hopefully they'll print his life and works again.
I saw something going around the internet that they were going to reprint that, so that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, I emailed them because I would recommend it to a bunch of people and then nobody could get it. I feel blessed that I was able to get copies of these before this all happened.
Right.
I feel partially responsible. I feel like, right? Like I feel bad. I mean, I'm glad that they're selling these books,
You've been stonking the Seraphim Rose market, man.
Every time I
Your GameStop
recommend one of these books, it ends up becoming like out of print after a few, or it ends up people can't find it after a couple months.
So there's a few more questions that we hit on just talking so much on what I wanted to ask you. One specific thing that we didn't, that I was curious just to get your reflection on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't finish the question about, finding Orthodoxy in Ecuador.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that was hard, man. Yeah. We weren't able to, we were searching. There were nobody. We were searching on the internet trying to find if there's any Orthodox here. And we heard about this Greek Orthodox group, but then we ended up hearing that they weren't really Orthodox and that they were sketchy. So we're like, okay, stay away from these people.
Right.
And then Father Deacon Ananias, we're on a phone call with him and talking to him about it. Just like, man, we're having a really hard time finding, doesn't seem like there's a single parish in this whole country. And he goes, why don't you email these people? And he sends me a link, and it's Serbian Orthodox parish in Guayaquil, which is a 9-hour drive from here, which is far, but says, why don't you email these people? We'll email him. And we end up getting this guy's phone number, Father Raphael, and speaking to him in Spanish on WhatsApp, and then realize that he speaks English. So then we start speaking in English with him, and his Spanish is a little better than his English, but we tell him, what's up. We tell him that we're very interested in becoming Orthodox, that we've been, studying for a couple years, and we didn't realize there were any Orthodox here in this country. And he's, oh, I will come visit you. I will come and visit you, Jessica and Tristan. And he comes, and guy takes an overnight bus and comes on
9
a 12.
hours?
It's 12 hours on a bus, 9 hours on a car. Takes a 12-hour bus here. Never met us, right? Comes here on a bus. Comes to our little town that he's never been to. He's like 7 feet tall, huge Serbian dude. Just like towering or walking around. We go and we meet him in town, and he comes up to our house and spends a couple hours with us talking, and comes and blesses our home and brings us icons, brings us books. He brought me like really nice books. He brought me a Seraphim Rose. He brought me the Orthodox Dogmatic Theology, which Father Seraphim Rose was involved in creating. He brought me this book of Saint John the Wonder Worker, which is Seraphim Rose actually assembled this book about Saint John. He wasn't Saint John when Seraphim Rose helped put it together. It was what's called the book is called, it's not St. John, it's John Maxim, not St. Father John Maximovich. I forget the book is called, but Seraphim Rose's book about St. John the Wonder Worker, St. John of Shanghai and San Francisco, brings us that book, and then a book about St. Sava. It was like the life of St. Sava, who's the first patriarch of the Serbian Orthodox Church.
Right.
And that's an amazing book, by the way. Not a lot of people know about St. Sava.
I haven't.
And he brings us he's good, man.
Yeah,
St. Sava's got a great history. The Serbs love Sava. St. Sava is amazing. So brings us these books, brings us icons, brings like holy oils, blessed oil, and blesses our home, prays with us, kind of shows, teaches us something, teaches us how to pray. Never met us in our first, it was just like, okay, this guy's gonna come all the way to see us. Like, that's kind of weird. Because I'd heard that there are a lot of Orthodox are really not very, they don't care about converts, but no, he's on a mission. He's here in South America. He's here doing battle. He's here converting people, battling Jesuits, and he's here doing it. And so it's crazy. Came all the way to our home, brought us all these gifts and crosses and these icons and a bunch of his cards that he had printed out so that we can give to other people too. He was just on a serious mission. He had these 2 young kids with him that wanted to become priests and monastics, and he had this great sense of humor, and it's like joking and very lighthearted, and just like this most kind, sweet, lighthearted person you'd ever meet. When I say like a child, it's in a good way, like a child, not like a naive.
Right.
I remember like sitting up on the mountain. He's like, I think the government is modifying the weather. I was just like, just knew a lot of the things that that we had come to know about the world, saw everything for what it was, but just not like overburdened with the heaviness of the world, and just completely lighthearted, and loves, just loves God and loves Christ and loves doing what he does. And it taught us how to pray and kind of gave us some guidelines. And that was in the beginning of 2020. That was late January 2020, when he finally made it over here. So that was just so amazing, because that was after a couple years of like just searching and seeking. And then Father Deacon Ananias just goes on some website. It's like, oh, here you go. Just like, man, I've been waiting for this for years now, and it happened when it was supposed to happen.
Wow.
And he.
Well, and it was right before COVID too. So
right before
when it was supposed to happen.
Right before everything shut down.
It almost sounds like the providence of Bobby making it to Mount Athos right before COVID. Again, it's like, and then he was able to spend Lent on Athos, whereas like my church was closed, everybody's churches was closed. He's literally in the holies of holies.
Yes, it's amazing. It's crazy. So that happened, and then when COVID happened, we weren't able to travel really freely for a long time within the country.
Right.
But it was really amazing because he's serving liturgy throughout the whole thing. All the Catholic churches, Roman Catholic churches, were all shut down, and he's, not trying to get no one in trouble here, but he's serving the divine liturgy throughout the whole thing, and
Beautiful.
Throughout with Pascha and everything. Zero fear, zero desire for any innovations and stuff like that. Right. So, we
true faith.
Yeah, we baptized. Like we'd been trying to get baptized for like 2 years already. We're just like so desiring and zealous, but it ended up happening in God's time. It ended up giving us a long period of time, which it's usually catechism was 3 years for so long, right? So, I'm glad it took the time it took. I would have liked for things to happen quicker if it was in my will, but it wasn't my will. And it was great. So we ended up being baptized and chrismated on Christmas of this year. So just 2 months ago, we were baptized and chrismated and received in the Orthodox Church.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing. So it is a journey for us. So it's like, it's a little different parish life that we have here.
Sure.
What we find that's amazing about this parish, it's a Serbian Orthodox church, but it's a lot of converts. There are some Russians and Serbians that are from abroad, but then there are a lot of converts, and that means people are very serious. They're to leave and to be in a Latin American country and to convert to Orthodoxy. It's not just like a flippant thing. They're not just doing it because it's trendy. Nobody here is doing it because it's cool. it's very difficult for a lot of them, and they don't fast here, right? Roman Catholics don't fast. So then it's like they got to fast, they have to do, and our spiritual father, he's pretty strict, you know. He's like, you're gonna fast. That's basically what it is. He's like, it's not. I mean, you hear a lot of in the U.S. a lot of there's a little more leniency and a little bit more gentle with them, but he's like, no, everybody has to fast, and you know, it's not like you're condemned if you mess up, but he's like, this is it. This is when you start. This is meat fair week. This is cheese fair week.
Yeah,
This is how you do it.
meat
And
fair's
you know, he does
go ahead.
for us because we've got, you know, certain health issues, and I'm not actually physically able to
Right.
fast with the traditional fasting rules, unfortunately. He's very kind about that and understanding and merciful. And
Good.
do not worry. You know, just tell me, do not worry, Tristan. The demons want you to feel guilty and to attack you. You know, he gives me guidelines on how to do it without, you know, feeling like I'm a, you know, like I'm doing it, like I'm not doing it right and stuff like that. He helps me to do it in a way where I'm not going to destroy my health and be on the poo poo throne for the whole day. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was an amazing situation, man. It's hard. We have to. It's an 8 hour. It's a 9 hour. If we drive really fast, it's 8 hours, but it's a 9 hour drive to get to our parish, to our church,
Wow.
and it's his monastery, right? But the monastery, it's like in the middle of Quito, not Quito, Guayaquil, which is very. It's like the worst city in Ecuador. It's the worst
Oh.
one. But it's really beautiful, you know. It's like it's very modest, it's very humble, and we were under the you know, his spiritual father is Metropolitan Amphilochie,
Hmm.
who just reposed. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if
Yeah.
he was really, I don't know if you heard about what it was going on in Montenegro.
Yeah.
Um, Amphilochie of Blessed Repose, Metropolitan Amphilochie was was really instrumental in a lot of what was going on there, and you know, kind of backing down the government from destroying and taking a lot of the church property.
Oh wow.
So yeah. So it really, really amazing. Our bishop is great here, and yeah, it's a journey. It's hard. It's different for us, but we feel really supported and really yeah. I wish we were closer to. I wish we could have liturgy every day. I wish we could have
Right.
you know, to communion and have the Eucharist every single day. But for us, it's different. So hopefully, by the grace of God, one day we could have a parish here. There are other people who are interested in converting. I think if more people were exposed to Orthodoxy, a lot more Westerners, a lot more of former New Agers who become Protestants would convert if they were exposed to it. And hey, we try to do what we can, set a good example, and have conversations with people. And we've got a lot of friends who are really interested. It's hard to convince people to drive, you know, 9 hours to go to a liturgy,
Yeah, I would imagine. I would
especially leaving a
imagine.
beautiful place like this and going into like the dirtiest city in Ecuador. But yeah, so yeah, we love it and we feel really blessed, and everything kind of happened on God's time, and our children are really cool. They love it. They love to pray. You know, I think they might still be awake waiting for me to do evening prayers
Well, I
right
can
now.
hurry up. I mean, I don't mean to take up more of your time, but
No, I mean, I don't mind, man. If you got some more questions,
yeah,
we could.
I had a few more
I can always come
questions
back. You can always come back on as
for
well.
sure, for sure. Um, I just have really three questions. The first one was how did you uh, really the transition to being a father? I'm curious, how did you view your like the way in which you viewed yourself, the maturation from Tristan pre being a dad to being a dad, and the life that you live now? Clearly, there has to be a sort of psychological transition there. I'm curious, were you conscious of that, or how
Mm.
was the sort of transition into being a father? Can you just speak to that for?
Intense, yeah, it was super intense. I mean, I didn't like I said before. You know, I was really in my early day, like my early youth, like just coming out, or my late youth, whatever, my early adulthood, coming out of a lot of just kind of spiritual darkness. You know, and it was, you know, just being kind of in rap, seeing the world for what it is and being upset about it, being mad about it, right? Like just dealing with that for much of my young adulthood and childhood, just being really pissed off at the world. I think a lot of people can relate to that. And right? I mean, I wanted my children to have a good life. I wanted my children to have faith, right? And I didn't want them to be destroyed by the world. So it was difficult to have. I mean, when my daughter was first born, it was like the most beautiful experience that I'd had at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Most incredible experience. And she was born at home, home birth, and I got to catch her. It was amazing. So I caught her. We just praying to God and just so overwhelmed and really and crying and joy, like tears of joy. It was just beautiful, and so that was great. But like actually being a father for the first couple of years is it's a big transition. But I love my daughter more than anything, and I would do anything to protect her.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, she's never had like which just certain things that we decided to do that we wouldn't have been able to do if we still lived in like the suburbs of California, right? I mean, homeschooling, for instance, very difficult to do in California because it's basically outlawed.
Right.
It's very demonized. So,
Right.
we homeschool her. We don't. Um, she's both of our children are. They're very wise for their age. Our 4-year-old, he'll stand and pray with us, and he'll do prostrations, and he loves. He just like they love like they'll stand there for hours, in prayer, and just like they have. I guess what I'm getting at is children they soak up their environment,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like if we're involved in all sorts of nonsense, they're going to pick up the nonsense. They're going to play the games that their parents play. That's
Right.
as
It's a
kind of
great
as
way to
simple as
put
we
it.
can put it.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it.
So it's a really important mirror for you as well. You start to see your child throwing back the same behaviors at you, and you're like, "Where's that come from?" You know, well, it comes from you, dummy. It's like kid ain't learning that in school. Kid's not going to school. They're learning that from you. So we it really shows. It's really humbling. It's being a father. It's incredibly rewarding. It's not something to be taken lightly, but it's also not something that I would just like if you have faith and you're repentant and you're trying to be a better person, having a child can really accelerate your repentance and help you to grow a lot. I mean, they're in many ways more wise than us sometimes in their simplicity, the way they see the world, and the way that they accept things.
Right.
And they're not so I don't know, they're not so dirtied up by the world
Right.
as I am.
Right.
Growing up in public schools and growing up on mass media and pop culture and video games and
Right.
movies
Well,
and
and
music.
the ages in which we were exposed to pornography and
Right.
murder and all this. I mean, shoot, because of just having friends, and then they have older brothers. It's like, shoot, I
Yeah.
was introduced to pornography by 8 years old.
For sure. Yeah, no, I think 10 years old when I started seeing Playboys and stuff. And then, yeah, like, and then you hardcore porn. Everyone's seen hardcore porn by the time of like 12 when I
Right.
was in school, like Spice Channel and those things.
Right.
I had friends who have the thing where the cable box hacker thing,
Oh
the
yeah,
like
yeah. If
the
they had the
black
special
box.
card, yeah.
Yeah, they get the card. I forget what it was. But yeah, we'd like get videotapes and tape the pornos. It's just crazy, right? Like that stuff really warped us, man. It
Yes.
warped our minds when we were kids.
Absolutely.
It made us like sexual fiends and completely disconnected from reality. Little coomer babies. We were growing up in the suburbs. Little coomer babies. But yeah,
Right.
it was it's bad, man. So it's like it's huge that they're not exposed to this stuff like that we were, and it's a huge blessing to be a father. It's not easy sometimes, but it's not, I mean, we're equipped for it. We're
Right.
made for that,
Right.
But not all of us are. Maybe some people are made for more monastic life. At times I thought maybe that's like would be a better life for me, when I was younger, like that type of life, like living
Right.
alone and just being a spiritual seeker or something like that. But I it's been awesome. It's been amazing. Our second child was I mean it's stressful like having kids too. It's like because you start worrying, how am I gonna provide for them?
Right.
What if the world gets really bad? Like how am I gonna keep them out of the gulag? I mean it gets weird.
Oh shoot!
So
I imagine the weight of that is so much more on you having children, because I mean I guarantee you most of the people in the chat, I know myself, have already thought about that. I don't even have a wife. I don't even have children, but thinking about the future, thinking about trying to where You can't just projecting where we're going to be in the next
Yeah,
3. Who knows where we're going to be? But looking at trends, 3, 5, 10 years,
right.
it's like,
That's what I'm saying. It's like even before Ariana was born, I thought that this was like I thought that the world was going to go there much quicker.
right,
You know, I kind of thought it would fall apart quicker. So, you know, I think something my spiritual father always says is that the prayers of the repentant can push back the end. You know, the prayers of the righteous God can delay the end, and maybe has already delayed the end many times. And no, there are a lot of people. Like our spiritual father is also very optimistic about living outside of cities, kind of living in the mountains. He's expressed many times that he thinks Ecuador will be a little bit more safe in a lot of places, and as things start to get crazier. But he always, do not worry, Tristan. Do not worry, Tristan. Always tells me that. So I don't think I think it's not. It's easy to get caught up in that of like,
right.
man, like the world's so bad. I'm not trying to have my kids, go to the gulag or become, whatever, become little
Especially when you're
biological.
constantly trying to look at and connect patterns, because it
Yeah,
already sets your mind in a state where you're like always analyzing the world, trying to predict the future and all this stuff. At one point,
yeah,
again, you have to let go of that stuff. And
exactly. It's like you got to just, hey, sure, the world might fall apart, but it hasn't yet.
right.
And the fall apart's been really slow and really gentle
Well,
for most of
shoot,
us.
for you've been prepared for about 7 years.
Kind of. I mean, we're still not prepared, man. If the lights go out, my refrigerator goes out,
True.
like, little things.
And
Without
so,
electricity, I mean, we'll have food, but, I mean, we got,
right, you'll
it's
probably
not
be in
easy.
better shape than most people in the United States.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with you there. But hey, this could all be taken away,
Yeah,
right?
true. Very true.
People thought that they were secure, and they thought they owned land in Russia in the 1890s.
Yeah. 1917 had something else to say about that.
Exactly, bro. So it's like, hey, I'm aware that things could get bad, but I'm not worried about it. My kids have a lot of faith. We feel like we try to do our best, and I can't say we have done our best, but we try to do our best to raise them in a way where they understand what the world is, they understand what's important, and they understand what's most important for us. So I think raising the kids with a good prayer life,
Yes.
um, and
Amen.
being baptized now, they take it all very seriously. And
Right.
my son gets mad at us now when we call him by he was born, we named him Ryder. Ariana was born 8 years ago, and but their names are, they get kind of upset if we don't call them. Ariana's name is Mary and Ryder is Herman, after Saint Herman of Alaska. So, why do you call me Ryder? He thinks it's funny. He loves called Herman now. So yeah, it's
That's well, that's
yeah,
beautiful. I mean, that's why the church is so adamant about raising children in the faith, because if they're brought up properly in the faith, unlike so many cradles aren't, right? They don't know anything about Orthodoxy. But if they are brought up, I mean, you can't take that away from them. And even if they are to wander as adults, that foundation is what they're going to return back to, especially once they encounter real chaos and real evil in the world.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important, is having tradition to pass to your kids. And that's what was lacking in the Protestant world. That's what's
Exactly.
totally absent in most of the West and the secular world. There's no tradition. The tradition is,
Right.
whatever, Mickey Mouse
To
and
kneel for BLM, that's tradition.
right, BLM and Mickey Mouse and mind control.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's crucial, man. And I'm a big fan of families. I think I want people to have families. I think having family can be very rewarding if it's meant for you.
Right.
And I suggest that men marry young, and maybe if you're in your 30s, find a girl in her early 20s that's not too tainted by the world, and marry them young,
Trying
and
to, trying to.
have them kids. And but yeah, it's hard. It's really difficult right now, and you have to kind of, it's almost like extracting like you really have to do a lot of work to pull somebody kind of out of the world. And it has to be God's will. It has to be their will as well, lined
Right.
up with your will. And your wills have to line up together if you want to raise a family together. But I think with faith and with strength that guys like you obviously have, you're gonna you can find somebody that wants to come along for the ride. And And yeah, the reality that you build together has to be stronger than the fake illusions of the world. You got to build on the bedrock of faith in God,
Right.
of tradition of the church, and that's hard. So there's a lot of tainted folks in the world. All of us are tainted by by worldliness and by sin and by all this madness and modernism. But we don't have to keep that tainted nature. We can shed that, and it takes time and it takes sweat and blood and tears, but it's worth it.
Right.
It's worth the difficulties, and having a family is definitely worth the is worth it, man. And I would suggest people who are I mean, when we were going to have children, it was like, oh, how are you going to educate them? How are you going to provide for them? How's your daughter going to go to college? It's like, all that stuff, I don't care. Honestly, that's like what it comes down to. I
Right.
don't care about all that. What I care about is the truth. What I care about is God. What I care about is raising, these beautiful creatures that are made in the image and likeness of God.
Right.
And yeah, so I don't think marriage is very easy for a lot of people right now. Finding a spouse is not very easy for a lot of men and women alike. But if you start at what's most important, and that's your connection to God, you're grounded in the reality with your feet firmly on the ground, and not worried about worldly things, you're going to. That's really what a woman wants, anyways. Like a woman does, like really deep down inside, what we all want is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we want. So if you're a man and you're lined up with what's true, what's real, which God is a person. The truth is a person. The truth
Right.
is not a concept. The truth is a person. If you're lined up with that, then you will. People are attracted to that. People want that. Now that can become a distraction too, because then it's like you just have all these worldly women who just want to, like whatever, they want to get a piece. They want to nail you down. They want to dominate you because they've got those worldly aspirations too. But hey, deep down inside, underneath all the nonsense, we're all people made in the image and likeness of God, and women want a strong, true, honest man that will love them for who they are, see them for who they are, and support them. And it's not necessarily just about materialism for a lot of people, even though on the surface it is that with a lot of people. So
Right.
yeah.
Amen, brother. I'm just gonna end the stream on that note. That was such a beautiful endpoint. I had some questions, and maybe next time we can do a conversation more into the nuts and bolts of farming and like homesteading and kind of what activities you engage in, the day-to-day jobs, and get into maybe some advice for people wanting to start their own gardens or homesteads.
Awesome.
So
Yeah, would love to, man. Yeah, I'm down to come back for sure.
that'd be great.
And I really appreciate you having me on, man.
Oh no, I appreciate you coming on. I'm really looking forward to this, and so it's been great. It's been phenomenal just hearing your story and your testimony. Just you, your wife, your family. I guarantee that's going to help so many young men.
Thank you.
There's a few questions directed at you. If you just have a few more minutes, we can just run through them real quickly. Dr. Mo, a good buddy of mine, he is a naturopathic doctor, has his own clinic outside of LA. I know he watches your content and he's a fan, and he said, what is Tristan's take on testosterone in the modern man and pharmaceutical interventions for optimization and regeneration?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, testosterone levels are plummeting, right? And the
Yeah.
fertility levels, sperm counts are plummeting. I think this is obviously by design. Pharmacologically, we're being assaulted through xenoestrogens, plastics everywhere, phytoestrogens in food. It's a big deal. So yeah, testosterone levels are plummeting. Something to consider is also your androgen site receptivity, right? Your sensitivity at your androgen sensors
Mm-hmm.
are also important. Just like with insulin, it's like your insulin sensitivity, your ability to uptake the glucose is more important than the amount of glucose that you take up, as far as like using glucose as fuel. Same thing with testosterone. So lifting weights, that can increase your androgen receptor site receptivity, in your sensitivity. But yeah, I think the pharmacological interventions for testosterone replacement therapy, I was talking to a friend of mine who just a few years ago, this guy was like a mess. Like he was just always trying to start shit and like fight and And I saw him the other day, and I was like, "Oh man, you look great! Like, what's going on? How's it going?" And there was no weirdness all of a sudden. He was just cool with me. He's like, "Oh man," and he just starts telling me what's going on. He's like, I was sick, man. I was messed up, mate." He's from the UK. He's got like a Cockney accent. I can't do his accent. He's got this great Cockney accent. He's like this veteran, military vet from the UK. He's like, "Man, you know, I got my testosterone levels checked and all my hormones checked, and they were just tanked. No testosterone. Estrogen was super high. I was just messed up, man." And it's like I took a tetanus shot because I got a rusty nail in my hand. I got a tetanus shot. Ended up getting tetanus from the shot. Ended up getting my health tanked after that, and I was just destroyed. And I finally got my testosterone levels checked, and I realized my T levels were like 0. I got on TRT, and I feel great. So I'm like, "Hey man, that's cool." Like, I mean, you could, and a lot of people, like me personally, like I've never done steroids or testosterone replacement therapy, and I'm wary of it because I wouldn't want to become dependent. Because I would also be worried about, well, shoot, what if you like, you're using exogenous testosterone, and then all of a sudden you can't get it anymore for whatever reason, right? Like, what if there's like another lockdown and the medical system continues to get destroyed and you're not able to get it anymore, right? Well, that would worry me. There's one downside of it. You are becoming dependent on something. That's a pharmacological replacement for normal hormones. But hey, if it's going to give you your life back, if you're depressed, if you're anxious and you can't, and your testosterone levels are tanked and your health is destroyed, um, and testosterone replacement therapy is going to like help you, I'm totally fine with it. There's no problem with that. So yeah, I think it has its place. Like pharmacological intervention of testosterone replacement therapy has its place. I think it's overused and people like, I mean, dudes just want to get jacked, so they're like want to take
Oh, for sure. Right.
and take 2 grams a week of test, something like that. But
Right. Dr. Mo, that's what his clinic is actually, is testosterone. That's mostly what he deals with, is
but he
TRT.
sees people like this all the
All
time
the
whose
time,
health
yeah.
is
And he's seen, and that's why I've had him on the channel multiple times. He is just such a spokesperson for the problems with testosterone, because he has to inject this in people, because he's seeing 32-year-old men that can no longer get a hard dick, that literally their testosterones are so low that people are like, what is going on? This doesn't make any sense.
It's insane. It's insane. It's environmental. It's a lot of it could be wireless frequency radiation that has something to do with it. Who knows? We don't know every single factor that's affecting it, but we do know a lot of the factors that affect it. Xenoestrogens, a sedentary lifestyle, phytoestrogens, tainted water supply.
Right.
We're being pharmacologically manipulated at a mass level, and all mammals' testicles are shrinking. The biologists are studying this. Every single mammalian species is having shrinking testicles. So yeah, it's screwed up, man. And I'm glad that there are guys like Mo that do it and that help guys out but I think that you should see a doctor instead of just trying to be like Google doctor and like
Yeah.
getting on like whatever, there's like getting on a bunch of different anabolics. Go to a doctor and get like the proper testosterone
Right.
and get your levels checked. I think it can be beneficial. I do think that there are guys who can raise it naturally through lifestyle intervention.
Absolutely.
And that should be, I'd probably tried first, in my opinion. But
Agreed.
hey, if it ain't happening, it ain't happening.
Well,
And you got to get your life back.
Just knowing him, he would say the exact same. They're always trying to get people to raise their natural testosterone. Some people are so low, you almost have to give them a boost just to get their bodies to start going again.
Your immune
their
system
endocrine
shuts
system's
down.
basically shut down. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Dude,
so,
I mean, it's crazy. And they're saying like, well, what about when COVID started? And they're like, well, we might have to inject men with estrogen because men are more susceptible to
right.
And
you can already see what the point of all that. Yeah. It's so evil. Oh my God.
That's a great question. I'm glad there are guys doing that because I see dudes all the time who've been helped by that.
Yeah.
And if I had to take it one day, I would do it.
Yeah. Jimmy threw in $9.63 and said, "Oh boy, I hope carnivore can cure my autism, Asperger's, Down syndrome, and gayness. Great stream, fellas."
Just joking, by the way. Jay didn't actually cure his Down syndrome.
That was the one thing that
He's still got.
No. And then just have a few more here. It looked like Pano threw in $1 to start and said, "This is why Oh, nope. Wrong one. Wrong one. Pano. There it is. Enjoy the bigot bucks. Bigots. And then Mikhail threw in $10. Thank you very much, Mikhail. He said, blessings, gentlemen. Daniel E. threw in $10 as well. Thank you very much, Daniel. He said, looking forward to this one. Pano threw in another $1 and said, Tristan, we going to convert Cole Robinson to Orthodoxy anytime soon. LOL. We need to get Orthodox into carnivore snack diet. The Orthodox Lenten fast technically begins with a 72-hour fast, so now would be a great time to start.
Yeah, yeah. Now I wonder how many people do that 72-hour fast in the beginning. I mean, I will be doing my best to do that, but it can be difficult for me. You know, I got physical things I have to do, and
Right.
it can be hard.
Yeah, I'm just doing this is my first Lent, and everybody asks me because I do my fitness stuff. What do I do when I'm fasting? Secret is I haven't fasted, so I've been eating steak and being nutritious with my body, and so now through this Lent, what I've told myself is I'll uphold the Lent for I'm going to say probably 2 or 3 days throughout the entire Lent. So that way it's doable, it's feasible, it doesn't destroy my body. I continue my lifestyle. I can get spiritual from it. I'm beginning that process. So
Yeah,
that's
it's hard. I mean, it definitely in the monastic life. It's amazing. I think there are a lot of factors too that may. We didn't get to talk about this earlier, but I think like the monastic diet, fasting diets in Orthodoxy. We've had a lot of changes to our food supply in the last couple hundred years, especially the last 50 years.
Great point.
Pesticides with the destruction of our guts. And it doesn't seem like everyone could eat bread 100 years ago.
Right.
You didn't have this like, I
kind
can't
of
eat
bread.
gluten. It wasn't the same. It wasn't this Monsanto glyphosate soaked stuff.
No.
So it's a shame, man. And what's crazy is like they're really going after all those foods, with the patented seeds, with the pesticide use. The nutrition levels of these foods have changed dramatically, and it's unfortunately changed how we're able to digest these foods. And we're being our guts are being attacked from so many different angles, from the water supply, from the food supply, from the happy, healthy injections that we are being mandated at every stage of our development, like right before the most important. Like, why do you get a new round of shots before you go to middle school and then high school and then college? Because that's when that's when you're the most, the parts of the brain that are affected, the immune system is associated with the parts of the brain that also run your emotional response and your in charge of like your anxiety and whatnot. So I think there is definitely something to be said about the timing of some of these injunctions and injections that we're being given when we're at our most vulnerable, right? When we're at our most important transitions in life, we're getting shot up and our immune system is being, wrecked, and our gut's being attacked. And our gut is intimately tied in with our brain, the gut brain barrier everybody talks about. A lot of people, you actually feel emotion. You do feel it in your gut. You have more.
Bless you.
Yeah, sorry, Bill Gates. You got more nerve endings in your gut and your intestines than you do on your fingers. It's more sensitive in there. So, it's a real shame that those foods are becoming indigestible to a lot of people. And I wish I was able to do, Orthodox fasting and eat Lenten foods, but we got to do our best and do what we can do. And yeah.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go for it, man.
I was going to say, Tall City threw in $10. He asked a question we've already answered. He said, Tristan, how did you come to Orthodoxy? Been there, done that. And I have spent a lot of time in Costa Rica and Mexico where there is zero ortho presence. What do you feel can be done to facilitate the spread of the church into these areas?
Yeah, you got to get a zealous. I mean, it would help to have like an archimandrite or somebody who's some sort of a monastic that's actually a missionary and on a mission, and on fire for the faith. And we need. I think we need a lot more missionaries, and I think that would be great.
I think that is a huge thing lacking in Orthodoxy. Is if you look at its presence in America, for example, very little missionary work or conversion, evangelizing, getting converts. And also, if you look at out of all the Christian denominations and you start breaking them up amongst the more particulars, Orthodoxy is one of the least to contribute to society in terms of like hospitals or nursing homes. You know how the Methodist home or what Orthodoxy doesn't make anything in the West. You know, like what we should have an Orthodox church. There should be an Orthodox bank. There should be things related to Orthodoxy, but it doesn't seem like they tend to create a whole lot. So that I
Yeah,
think is
no,
an
it's,
area where we could really grow as a church.
yeah, man. I think the Serbians seem to be pretty, at least our spiritual father, he's missionaries and Archimandrite, and he's very serious about what he does. And I think we need more like that. And
Yeah.
we need more metropolitans that are really that want to send out bishops and Archimandrites and priests into these places to convert people, because this is what we're told to do, and there are some that are doing it, and hopefully we have more to come now. But as laymen, I think we should live an Orthodox life
Yeah,
and show the fruits of your labor without
exactly. Just try to be
being,
an icon.
combative with people. And if you do have people that are asking you about it, tell them about it, and be honest with them. I
Hmm.
don't think you don't have to sugarcoat it. Our spiritual father tells these Roman Catholics all the time that it's a false church, it's a fake church, and so he converts a lot of people with that. But I mean, the different approaches for different people. Of course, there's some people that are going to require a more gentle approach, but I think you need to have conversations, and don't be afraid to
Right.
and give your own testimony, and show the fruits of your labor, but not in a prideful way. Be humble and try to bring people to God.
Right. I do want to say that maybe an Orthodox bank isn't the most appropriate thing, but I was just trying to think of societal structures.
Like
Certainly
Orthodox,
hospitals,
we
schools.
need more like Orthodox Planned Parenthoods, right?
Yeah.
Orthodox strip clubs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We need to be engaging in commerce. We need to have
Well, I see
or,
with the banks, I think it's a real because I don't know how familiar you are with like the whole ortho online Telegram cultures. A lot of people are trying to move to like West Virginia, Montana. They're trying to create some
okay.
communities, but with the whole banking thing, and it's that's why I've heard people in the ortho spheres talking about ways to set up more societal structures and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
we need communities, and that's something that our spiritual father is he's trying to put something together as well, and he's been encouraging us to tell people to to even move to Ecuador, but we don't.
right,
But I think there are a lot of places, like you mentioned, maybe Montana and other places, where it would be good to start a community under the guidance of a spiritual father,
right,
not like not like a weird cult or anything.
right. No, 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 no. Yeah. And so, brother, let me just read this last one and let you go. I feel bad for keeping you
Bible
from
says
your
we need an
children, brother.
Orthodox Quran. We need Orthodox mosques, right? Like we need Orthodox shipyards, Orthodox militaries,
Yeah.
Orthodox,
We do have some Orthodox militaries.
Orthodox militias,
Yeah. Yeah. Free ranging militias. Um,
Orthodox Chaz. Come on, we need them all.
Rat Splatigan threw in $15. Thank you very much, Rat Splatigan. He said, "Bless you guys for spreading the message of Blessed Father Seraphim Rose. May it lead many more Americans to the truth. And COTEL, your streams just keep getting better. Keep up the great work. Tristan, love you, brother." So
Woo! Thanks,
thank you,
man.
Rat Splatigan. And that is
Check it
all the
out.
super
Just
chats. I
one used copy of Father Seraphim Rose's biography. Who's going to swoop that up? $60. I'd buy that. It's like, I'm selling it, but no, I'm just kidding.
You'd
One copy.
pretty soon you'd sell it. You'd cause a bidding war. You'd make more than 900.
I'm going to sell mine for $9,000.
Well, brother, again, want to thank you so much for coming on and everything that you shared with everybody today regarding your own journey, your life, being a father. And hopefully we can do it again in the near future, and this time talk a little bit more in regards to the meats and potatoes of living on a homestead, running a homestead, living a more sustainable lifestyle, and what all goes into that. And I'm sure a lot of people in the chat are be interested in that as well, because a lot of people want to move into the sort of lifestyle you're living. So,
Cool. Yeah, I would be honored to come back on.
all right.
I think it would be awesome to come back on. I I really appreciate you having me on. I'm looking at this website, Orthodox Logos. They have a few copies of Blessed John the Wonder Worker book. This book is also out of print. If somebody wants to swoop these up, check these out here. I don't know. The Seraphim Rose book. It really annoys me that the prices are going up on those, but you guys can find them on some of these random websites for relatively cheap while they're still around. And then please, I would say email Saint Herman of Alaska's monastery and ask them to please print more of these. Print them, print them, print them, so they know that there's demand, and maybe they'll just they'll start it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Thanks. If you guys want to find more, you can check out my YouTube channel. It's Primal Edge Health. And
links
then
in the description.
Sweet, thank you. You can also find me on Twitter. I'm Tristan Haggard on Twitter. On what's it called? Instagram, it's Primal Edge Health, and on OnlyFans, it is. Oh no, sorry, wrong show. No OnlyFans.
I think it's Purple Lavender on OnlyFans.
It's Donkey Kong Badonkadonk on.
Oh, jeez. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you so much to everybody who supported the stream. And as always, until next time, I will see you guys later in this week. But until next time,